across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon and welcome to Drive Time right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be your host for 3 thrilling hours of news, views and topical debate all the way to 7 o'clock. Get on the show, get on the phone and call me on 03444991000. Lots to talk about today. Or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I promise to play your message out. It is Tuesday, June the 9th. Here's what's coming up. Horror in Belfast as a Sudanese madman is caught on camera trying to behead his victim on a residential street. Police have revealed that the knife maniac's immigration status is that he is a successful asylum seeker, given leave to permanently remain in the UK. Make of that what you will, but this much we know, don't we? A monster like this should never have been allowed into Britain as part of this crazy country's ongoing mass immigration lunacy. Doubtless, as in Henry Novak's case, we will be instructed by Starmer and his cretinous cabinet crew not to politicise this atrocity, and that we Neanderthals are wrong to blame the migrant crisis. To do so, two-tier Keir will almost certainly assert is, drumroll, far right. But are we wrong to boil with fury? Does this make us far right? To borrow a phrase, are we allowed to feel pure, cold rage over this primitive barbarism by a foreigner from allowed into our midst? Are we allowed to feel pure, cold rage now? 03444991000. A massive protest is planned in Belfast tonight. It's certainly righteous and understandable, and let's hope it's a peaceful one. But if trouble erupts in the febrile mood of long-suffering Northern Irelanders, stand by for the usual condemnations from two-tier Keir and the Liberal establishment trying to shift the narrative away from the glaring scandal of open borders and pathetic policies welcoming one and all, especially those who break our laws to break into our country. When is this insanity going to stop? 03444991000. Expert analysis and commentary throughout the show. Still, with the terrifying scourge of knife crime, a Manchester school goes into lockdown as a girl is arrested after 3 pupils were injured in stabbing attacks. What's happening in Britain's blackboard jungle? What happened to playground scuffles and kids' punch-ups? When did they turn lethal? 03444991000. Also on today's action-packed show, Kemi Badenoch calls for police race training and the public sector's diversity fixation to be abandoned and replaced by good old-fashioned common sense. Is she right? 03444991000. Plus, how the scourge of obsessive DEI has made work almost impossible for men, especially white men. And just to prove that all this serious derangement has a lighter side, check this out. A museum has put a trigger warning on Janet and John children's books. You couldn't make this nonsense up. 03444991000. All this and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Tuesday afternoon together. Now, I'm going to go straight over to Mike Neville in just a second, former Met Police detective, get his take on what's been going on in Belfast, the horror over there. But before we do that, let's hear from the leader of the DUP, Gavin Robinson, speaking in the House of Commons earlier.
Mr. Speaker, what occurred last night will have profound implications for community cohesion in this country. This needs to be a time for honesty and openness and truth. Will he confirm that he and his government recognise that uncontrolled immigration needs to end? Will he confirm that the government needs to reassure and protect our population who for too long have had their concerns ignored? And knowing that he and the Chief Constable and I share a concern that there could be violence, and express my wish and our collective desire for calm, that community cohesion lies on the precipice.
Powerful words from Gavin Robinson. Every word of that we should take note of. I agree with every word that Gavin said. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. We've got a lot to talk about today. I do think this is a seminal incident in the ongoing horror of our mass immigration madness. How many more times are we going to have terrible crimes committed by these people that we allow into the country? They break into our country, they break our laws, we allow them in, then we let them stay, and too many of them commit appalling crimes, particularly sex crimes. Yeah, this was a residential street in Belfast, and there he is straddling his poor victim, trying to behead him, to decapitate him with a knife, with his arm in the air, screaming some Sudanese claptrap. It's an absolute disgrace. 0344 499 1000. Let's go straight over to Mike Neville, now former Met Police detective. Mike, welcome to the show.
Good evening, Kevin.
Without further ado, just give me your thoughts on what we saw in Belfast.
Well, having seen it, it's absolutely just dreadful, Kevin. But it's just another incident which will say to people, the government have allowed into this country individuals who are extremely dangerous, who are committing the most awful crimes, and somehow this needs to stop. I think what happened in the past is that many of these incidents happened in inner English cities, and there were sort of people could say, oh, it's just the police being racist or somebody doing these things. No, it's all over the United Kingdom.
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt. We need to go over to Northern Ireland where a statement is being made right now. This is the First Leader of Northern Ireland talking.
We understand that the suspect was in Northern Ireland on a 5-year visa and entered Northern Ireland via Dublin. This was someone who came here to live within our community and yet has committed an act of appalling, barbaric violence. People legitimately need to be reassured that their concerns are not only being listened to, but taken seriously. The criminal justice process must be allowed to take place. We need a swift conviction, and on conviction, this dangerous man must be deported immediately. The safety of our communities must come first. My message is clear. I hear your concerns. They must be taken seriously. And in the meantime, I really genuinely appeal for calm across all of our communities.
I think all of us were horrified at what we witnessed unfolding last night in North Belfast. And I understand that many people in that community this morning will be traumatised, they will be fearful, and they will be angry at what unfolded on their doorstep, and they have every right to be so. My thoughts are with the individual who suffered grievous injuries and is now in hospital, and I hope that he will recover from those injuries. However, those who ran at their own peril to save him showed courage that I think needs to be paid tribute to also, as do I want to pay tribute to the emergency services and first responders who arrived on the scene and sought to save a man's life. And our thoughts, I think, are all with him and with his family today. There will, of course, be those who wish to take the pain, the suffering, the fear, the genuine concern in those communities and weaponise it for other purposes. I would appeal to communities not to allow themselves to be used and abused in that way, to remain calm, to allow the police to do their work in terms of their investigation, and to allow the justice system to hold the individual responsible to account for what was a shockingly barbaric attack on our streets. We do not want police resources and other people to be caught up in what could become a very heated situation. We want the police to be able to focus on this investigation and deliver the justice that the victim and his family and the wider community deserves. We also know that there are many in our community today who are fearful, who are afraid because they fear that others will associate them with the person who was involved in this attack. We need to reassure them too that their safety, along with everyone else's safety, is our primary concern. Everyone in
yeah, that's Naomi Long, the Justice Secretary of Northern Ireland. Previously, we heard Emma Little-Pengley and Michelle O'Neill, the joint First Ministers of Northern Ireland, appealing for calm. Well, Mike, you know, this is sort of standard issue stuff, and I know what they're worried about. There's a massive protest planned tonight in Northern Ireland, in Belfast. But from a community who are furious. As I said in my monologue, to borrow a phrase, are they allowed to feel pure, cold rage yet? Are we allowed to feel it? Because this atrocity was committed by a man who is a product of our mass immigration madness, who should never, ever have been allowed into this country.
You're absolutely right, Kevin. He should never be here, and this is just one of many things, isn't it? If it's not Callacane up in Nottinghamshire, if it's not Ruda Cabana in Southport, if it's not the tragic death of Henry Novak down in Southampton, no, in Belfast. This is all over the United Kingdom, and people can't help but noticing who's doing these things. These are wicked and evil crimes, and it needs to stop. The government have failed, and what they've done for many, many decades, of course, is attempted to cover this up. The whole Western world, the whole Western establishment's guilty of this. As I've said to you before, I was out in Germany in 2015 when the authorities tried to cover up mass sex attacks here. We see it time and time again in the West and in Britain, that people try to cover this up, and they give us the same old things about keep quiet, say some poems, we can all live together. It's a total mess, and something needs to be done about it. But I can only say to the rioters, I saw what Rupert Lowe said, it's one thing to be angry, but if you attack the police, if you riot, you just bring woe upon your cause. Peacefully protest, take the leaf out of Martin Luther King's book, show your anger, show your disgust, but don't be violent, because you'll just bring woe to yourselves and the cause that you support.
I'll tell you what I don't want to hear, Mike, and inevitably we will, from Tutia Keir and his cretinous cabinet. It'll be, don't politicise this event. They'll probably start talking about an isolated incident. And that we should all stay calm and let the police do their work. They're the ones who politicise these incidents by saying don't politicise them. They use them for their own purposes, to shift the narrative away from the horror of what's happening and try to blame the public for overreacting. It's going to happen again, just like it did with Henry Novak, isn't it?
I get the impression, though, Kevin, that the dam is bursting on this. The dam is bursting when you know that they've had to declare, haven't they, that first they said he was Somali, and then they've said, oh, he's Sudanese. Then they've actually declared what his immigration status is. He's in the country for a 5-year visa. I think what we're finding now is that they're getting more and more desperate. They know that the public are not going to listen to their nonsense. We're going to believe, in the past, 2 years ago, this would have been reported as a British citizen with mental illness, and everybody would have been sniggering under their breath and thought, I don't believe a word of it. A bit like the Welsh choir boy nonsense with Axel Ruda Cabana. But now the authorities are getting worried. They know they've got to tell the truth. And I just get the impression it's a bit like when you watch the Dam Busters film, when the first bomb hits, there's a little trickle of water. And I get the impression that their whole facade that they've created over 3 decades, that this is all working wonderfully, is finally breaking going down.
Well, the long-suffering people of Northern Ireland are in a very febrile mood. If you remember last summer, there were riots in Ballymena over these two teenage Romanian immigrants. I think they were Romanian migrants who were charged with the rape of a local girl. Those charges were later dropped. But the people of that area were absolutely seething, and the entire province, Northern Ireland, they are fed up. They are taking the brunt of this migrant crisis, both from the south. They come up from the island, the main country of Ireland, and they also come, they come in the other way as well. So they've had enough. I haven't got you for long, Mike. I'm sorry we had to break away to listen to the people talking in Northern Ireland, but I do want to ask you, still with knife crime horror, today a young girl, a pupil, we understand, has been arrested, and after a Manchester school went into lockdown after an attack on at least one teacher and we think two pupils with a knife, a serious stabbing knife attacks. One girl screamed, "I've been stabbed, I've been stabbed," as she fled from this knife-wielding female pupil. A male science teacher was stabbed in the neck as he tried to wrestle the knife away from her. Year 9 pupils were the victims of this horror. Age 13 and 14, her other two victims were. And I was just thinking, you know, when I was at school, when you were at school, I had quite a few playground scraps myself, you know, scuffles, kids. What's happened to kids? I mean, in our day, yeah, you'd have a punch-up, everybody would form a circle round and cheering, and some teacher would come and break it up, and we all moved on. What's happened to our schools now? They're attacking each other, trying to kill each other with knives. What is going on?
Well, the country has changed utterly since we were boys at school, Kevin. You know, we've got our own knife crime, we're importing knife crime. Kids see these things and they copy these things. It is utterly dreadful. I hope the teachers, well, and the two pupils who've been hurt, but I mean, Blackley, where this happened, is near Middleton, where my uncle was a detective constable, a pretty suburban working class area. It's like I say, these things now, rather than just being confined to inner cities, are hitting everywhere.
It's just terrible. It really, really is. And this horror unfolded at the Co-op Academy in Manchester, as you say, in Higher Blackley. And a last comment, haven't got long, but Kemi Badenoch today, Mike, has condemned the DEI diversity madness in the police and other public sector departments, and saying we need to scrap all of it, all of this race training, and replace it with good old-fashioned common sense. She's right, isn't she?
Absolutely right. She's absolutely right, and I offer my services to help with this. To like the Germans had denazification after the Second World War, we need a de-wokification policy. But the problem with the Tories is that people think, well, you had 14 years to square this away, and you did nothing. So you're Johnny-come-lately. Like me and others have been saying this for decades. It is a mess. We need to get rid of all this wokeism out of the police, get the police back to preventing and detecting crime, which should be their primary purpose.
Indeed, Mike. Well, listen, Mike, really good to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Mike Neville there, former Met Police detective. Let me know what you think about what's going on in Northern Ireland, especially what Kemi Badenoch says. She's right, isn't she? You know, we need to... Police forces, public sector departments, civil servants, we need to ditch all of this race training, all of this diversity claptrap, and get back to what this country used to be renowned for, good old-fashioned common sense. Common sense has been jettisoned and replaced by diversity, equality, madness, race training, lunacy. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Next up, we're going to go back over to Northern Ireland. We're going to talk to the night editor of the Belfast Telegraph, John Laverty, get his take on the situation there. And we need to talk about the people of Northern Ireland who I fear are going to show their rage tonight. I hope it's a peaceful protest, but shops and businesses have been ordered to shut down before the protest starts at 7 p.m. So I'm afraid there is the imminent threat of trouble over there. if there's one good thing to be said, there's certainly a united front from all sides, all the diversity, all the diverse elements of that community over in Ulster. So we'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Varda Callacane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We're going to talk to John Laverty of the Belfast Telegraph in just a second, but first a voice note from Bridget.
I have seen the difference that immigration has reaped upon society. Republic of Ireland, I recently went to Dublin to visit my son and his wife, and I could barely hear a Dublin accent there, Kevin. They have dumped immigrants into working class communities in Ireland, in the north of Ireland, and in England. And it's a powder keg, and something seriously, I hope it doesn't, but something seriously is going to go off, Kevin. My son and his wife have just recently, moved to Brazil. And I'm quite glad because Ireland, the Republic certainly, and from all accounts, Northern Ireland, is not the Ireland I was brought up and I was educated in before I moved back to London. But anyway, let's hope this might be yet another wake-up call. Let's wait and see.
Yeah, good voice note from Bridget there. I agree. Let's hope this is a wake-up call. Let's hope tonight's protest is peaceful. But the mood is very febrile in Northern Ireland. Let's talk to the night editor of the Belfast Telegraph, John Laverty. Welcome to the show, John.
Hello, Kevin.
Let us talk about the migrant crisis in Northern Ireland, because as some of my audience are pointing out to me as we speak in their texts, is that at least this horror that we witnessed in North Belfast, the beheading incident, has brought the diverse communities of Northern Ireland together. They are, Catholics, Protestants alike, are united in their fury about what happened here on a residential street in North Belfast. A Sudanese man here, perfectly legally, trying to cut the head off of a local guy. So there is a united fury in your community.
Well, very much so. One of the ironies, Kevin, is that this is exactly a year a year on from the riots in my hometown of Ballymena, which obviously we know about those. This is 1 year on. In the paper today, our original plan was to look back on those 1 year on, but obviously this horrific incident has taken things a lot further. And you're absolutely right. It has brought some deeply divided communities together in absolute horror and disgust about what happened. I mean, Northern Ireland is no stranger to violence, but to see the video of this that's been going around, and how graphic it was, and how ritual even it comes across as, there is repulsion from all around the province here.
Yeah, it's a scene that I don't think you should see anywhere in Britain. Now, the statistics of this, in Northern Ireland, they're getting on for 2 million people, 2 million citizens living there. I think it's 1,900,000, something like that. There are around about 2,300 asylum seekers. Earlier this year, the Home Office revealed that's how many were in receipt of support in Northern Ireland. Now, that's not a massive number, but as you said, John, a year ago, I remember us reporting on the Ballymena riots night after night after night. This was based around the allegation that two teenage Romanian migrants had raped a local girl. Those charges were later dropped, but it is pretty much proves, if you think about that and now what's happened, the migrant crisis in Northern Ireland is turning into a bit of a powder keg.
I think it is, yes, because it's got really bad over the last few years, and there's obviously an irony, because we used to deal with the sectarian conflict here, but that has moved on, and Northern Ireland was always the least diverse of all the UK provinces, and I think that let's just say it's the level of crime that's been coming from people who, let's just say, weren't born here has gone up. There is no doubt about that, and people are fed up with it. Now, that's not to excuse some of the violence that's been happening against locally born people, like Muslims who, for instance, at the weekend, who were trying to set up a new supermarket in the Shankill Road, and that place was torched at the weekend. There's been a bit of a powder keg going anyway, but I think that this particular incident, the graphic nature of it, the ritual nature of it has shocked even people over here, and it's now gone global. It's gone obviously UK wide, globally across the world, and I think that it's a big wake up call to people that there's a situation going on here that it's evolving from what it used to be in Northern Ireland, I'm witnessing anger in this part of the world that I haven't witnessed for a long, long time. And at my age, I've gone through every day of the Northern Ireland troubles and conflict, because I was only a young kid in 1969 when it started. And we've lived through 20 or 30 years of peaceful times since then. But there's unrest again for a different reason now. And it's something that I think the police and everybody in the public need to get to grips with before it gets any worse.
Yeah, let me ask you this, John. Last question, really. Thanks so much for coming. I believe that your paper, yourself, your reporters have got a very busy night ahead, because there's this massive protest planned in Belfast, and all businesses haven't been asked to. They've been ordered to shut up shop before this march, this protest starts at 7 p.m. Now, we all hope and pray that is going to be peaceful, but as you said, the mood there is very febrile. You must be worried about what might happen tonight.
Well, very much so. People I know are already going home. When I was coming into work today, actually, the amount of traffic that was heading out of the city was quite remarkable. That does happen here whenever this sort of thing is going to happen. And what I've been told, what we've been told, is that most of the main routes are going to be blocked off around 7 o'clock. Now that may not happen with all the routes, but there's definitely going to be some of them. And let's hope. I don't mind. I think as the head of the PSNI have said, peaceful protest, no problem at all. But these things always have the capacity to get out of hand, and let's hope that's not the case tonight.
Yeah, it's a shame that the migrant crisis has brought, if you like, the troubles back to Northern Ireland. John, very good of you to come on on what must be a very busy day. All the best, mate. Thank you very much. John Laverty, the night editor of the Belfast Telegraph. As I say, that is a paper with its work cut out tonight. As I keep saying, let's hope that tonight's protest is peaceful. But, you know, will it be? You know what I mean. I think trouble is almost inevitable. I hope not, but let's wait and see, shall we? Let's go to break now. And my next guest, I couldn't help noticing, posted on Instagram this morning this question, which I nicked for my monologue. Are we allowed to feel pure, cold rage yet? That was in response to the beheading attempt in Belfast. He is chief political writer at Spiked Online, and he will join me after the break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Going to go to Brendan O'Neill in just a second, but first, another voice note, this one from Peter again on the horror in Belfast.
It just seems to me, again, like the police and Starmer, they want us to just go and sit in a corner, shut up, so it can all be brushed under the carpet yet again. Well, judging by what I think is going to happen in Belfast tonight, that just isn't going to happen anymore. People have had enough. And this attempted murderer, where are they going to deport him to? They're going to send him back to where he come from, right? And hopefully the people there will deal with him. But you know something, right? I can't see this character leaving. I can't see this character being sent away, because they never do they? Because always the law and the government are on the side of the criminal in this country.
You're right, Peter. You're absolutely right. Let's go straight over to the chief political writer at Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill. Hi, Brendan.
Hi, Kevin. How's it going?
I'm OK. Now, you asked this question on Instagram this morning. I couldn't help noticing it. I'm going to answer it for you. You said, are we allowed to feel pure, cold rage yet? In other words, quoting what Nigel Farage said about the Henry Novak saga. I'm going to answer your question. Is no, we are not allowed to feel cold rage, pure cold rage. Keir Starmer will tell us we're not allowed to politicise a Sudanese man trying to behead a local Northern Irish guy in Belfast. We're not allowed to do this, and to do so will make us Neanderthal and far right. It's going to happen again, isn't it?
Absolutely right. I pose that very much as a rhetorical question because, as you suggest, we know the answer. We know what the political class is already thinking. They're already thinking, oh God, how are ordinary people going to respond to this? Are they going to turn into a racist mob? Are they all going to go absolutely crazy like they tend to do? That whenever something like this happens, whenever there is this kind of barbaric violence carried out by people who should not be in this country, that's their first instinct. Their first instinct is not to worry about the victim, or not to worry about our broken borders, or not to worry about the fact that they have overseen the arrival of thousands of unvetted men. Instead, they worry about us and our emotions and our words and what we are going to do. And that's exactly what's going to happen here.
Exactly right. And what Starmer and his cretinous cabinet crew will do, just as they did with Henry Novak, is they will try to shift the narrative away from the central horror in order to blame us because we're far right and we're Neanderthals. They will do this again. They will do this. And knowing Starmer, he'll probably have his fingers crossed, hoping there'll be a lot of rioting in Belfast tonight. We all hope, by the way, there isn't, but there's a massive protest planned. If there's a riot, you know what Starmer's going to do. Disgraceful scenes. I'm going to arrest them, send them all to jail. They'll shift the narrative away from the extraordinary, shocking fact that a man from Sudan tried to ritually behead a Northern Irish guy on a residential street in Belfast last night.
It's beyond horrific. And you are absolutely right that they will do everything they can to deflect attention from the story here, which is the barbarism that we saw on the streets of Belfast. Let's be honest about this. This was an apocalyptic act of savagery. This was an unspeakable crime. It was beyond belief, almost like a form of medieval butchery on the streets of Belfast in 2026. If you read what the police said this morning, they said the man has significant injuries to his eyes. This was an attempted eye gouging in public in Britain in 2026. It is beyond repulsive, and that's the only thing we should be talking about. But you know what, Kevin? We've got to look at who else is responsible for this. Now, of course, the only one who bears responsibility for the awful injuries inflicted on that man is the disgusting knife man, but he was aided and abetted by the state. He was aided and abetted by the willfully blind technocratic class who have overseen the destruction of our borders, by the activist class that is constantly crowing refugees welcome because they care more about their own virtue than they do about the safety of working class men and women, and by a legal system that just completely refuses to remove people who should not be in this country. So the backdrop to this crime is the state failure, the failure of the state to protect our borders, to remove people who shouldn't be here, and to protect ordinary Britons. That's what this story is about.
Exactly right. And of course, this government, David Lammy and Starmer, they spent a lot of time condemning J.D. Vance for his take on the Henry Novak horror, because he linked that to the migrant crisis. I could have a debate with J.D. Vance about that, but everything else he said in that social media post, that the manner of the death of this poor young man, Henry Novak, was symptomatic of the decline of our civilization. That was on the money, absolutely accurate. Now, but I could debate whether or not you could call the Sikh community the result of our migrant crisis. I don't, in all honesty, think that you can. But I do not want to hear Lammy or Starmer or any of Labour's other apologists telling us we can't link what happened in Belfast, this beheading horror, to the migrant crisis. It is a direct result of the migrant crisis. This guy arrived here. We're not sure how he got here, but he was clearly an asylum seeker. After 5 years, he was given indefinite leave to remain. This horror is a direct result of the migrant crisis.
100%. This would not have happened if we had proper control of our borders and if we took seriously the public's cry to fix our borders and to remove people who shouldn't be here. If the political class did that, as people have been asking them to for 5, 10, 20 years, this would not have happened. It is as simple as that. And, you know, when I saw that image of the knife man kind of punching the air with a kind of blood-curdling delight, I thought to myself, this is an image for our times, because what we see here is the murderous intent of one individual, but also the murderous indifference of the state. The state has allowed tens of thousands of unvetted men to come into this country. And you know what? Working class communities are sick of paying the blood price for this. They're paying the blood price for bourgeois virtue, because you have the activist class in their leafy suburbs who never suffer the consequences of their activism. They can live far away from the refugees who they welcome in. It's ordinary working class communities who are paying the price. It's women and girls who suddenly overnight have 800 men from God knows where at the end of the street. It's the women and girls who have been raped, and there are large numbers of them, including by a suspected rape gang, alleged rape gang overseen by Afghan nationals. And it's men like this man in North Belfast who was attacked in the most savage way. Ordinary people are paying the price for the failure of the state and for the supposed virtue of the activist set. That's what's going on right now, and it's sickening.
What should we do? I mean, do you have any confidence that our government, that the authorities will react in the way that they should to this atrocity in Belfast? This should be the clarion call. This should be the wake-up call. Time to do something about this. I just had John Laverty, he's the night editor of the Belfast Telegraph, on the show, and he said the saddest thing. He's a man of a certain age. He said he was a child during the Troubles. He said we've had 30 years of relative peace here. He said if there's any small solace from what's happening with this migrant crisis is it has brought the Protestants and the Catholics, the divided communities, together in their fury about what's happening to their joint community. But, he said, the migrant crisis has returned the Troubles to Northern Ireland. That is just disgraceful.
You know, Kevin, I was in Belfast last week, as it happens, and I was thinking to myself, what a beautiful city Belfast is. It's so peaceful now in comparison with the 80s and the 90s. It's full of good people, getting on with life, working hard. It's a wonderful place. And but as you say, it's now inflicted by the same kind of horrors that we've seen in England, in Wales, in Scotland, where we have these unvetted men coming into the country, given pretty much free rein. They're often supported by us. We are compelled to fund their lifestyles by paying for their hotels, paying for their food and so on. And they are visiting atrocity after atrocity on ordinary Brits. And now that's in Northern Ireland as well. Like you, I really hope tonight's protest is peaceful, because we need to make such a strong statement against this government and what it has done to this country. And of course, the previous government, the Tory government too. But in answer to your question, will this be a wake-up call for the ruling class? I don't think it will be. I think they are just lost. There's nothing Starmer can or will do. I don't think there's anything that the old Tory regime will do, even though Kemma Badenoch, I think, is a pretty good leader. But I think it will be a wake-up call for ordinary people. I think around the country, people who are already very angry about this situation will be made more angry, and they will be determined to get new people into power to fix this problem. I think that's what's going to happen.
This is breaking news, Brendan. Literally just come on the wires. It's the story of this Sudanese asylum seeker, this migrant. The suspect in the Belfast knife attack is believed to have travelled from Sudan to Paris and then from Paris to Dublin on unknown dates before taking a bus to Belfast in February 2023, where he immediately claimed asylum before being given permanent leave to remain in the UK in September 2023. That is from the PSNI Chief Constable John Butcher. That's the police service in Northern Ireland. So he essentially broke into Belfast in February 2023. Just a few months later, September, he's granted permanent leave to remain. How many questions were asked about this guy? Obviously, probably none. Now we know the kind of guy that we let casually into this country to live for the rest of his life if he wanted to. Unbelievable, isn't it?
You know, what are we doing? What has become of Europe? The fact that people can just travel around like this, people who we don't know who they are, we don't know what their intentions are, we don't really know where they came from. Sometimes we don't know their names or their ages. It is psychotic. If I was to travel to New York or Paris or Rome, people would, at the border, they would say, who are you? Show us your passport. What do you want to do here? You know, this is perfectly normal checks, and they are not being carried out on these swarms of people that are moving around Europe at the moment. It is really, really worrying and incredibly dangerous. We now know that for sure. I just think that the withering of our borders is the biggest crisis of our time, because it is the thing that is allowing so many men to come to this country, and many of whom do wicked things, some of whom don't, of course, and people are incredibly angry about it. You know, the other thing they're angry about, Kevin, is constantly being called racist by the establishment just because they have questions about this regime, just because they want a handle on our borders and better border controls. We are constantly called racist for that. We are called fascists. The bourgeois activist class is always looking down its nose at us, and they will do the same tomorrow. When people get angry about this, they will do the exact same thing, and they will call us racist. So we have no control over our borders. We are gagged from speaking the truth. Our emotions are policed by people like Keir Starmer, who tells us not to feel rage. We are just have our hands tied constantly. And that's the thing that's really infuriating people.
I'll tell you another thing that's infuriating me. I was away last week, but I followed the Novak saga with great interest, obviously. And do you know what enrages me is that people say to Starmer, they say to the police, look, two-tier policing is palpable in this country. It is obvious. It happens all the time. Henry Novak died because of anti-white racism in a DEI brainwashed police force. And we say this to them, and they look us in the face and they say, no, you're wrong. There's no such thing as two-tier policing. The boss of the chief constable of Hampshire Police, a guy called Alexis Boone, said, I don't recognise the term two-tier policing. So that is their way of dealing with this two-tier crisis, just staring us in the face and pretending it doesn't exist. That is incendiary. It is a recipe for disaster.
It's classic gaslighting. That's what they're doing, because we can all see with our own eyes what's going on. We've all seen the policy documents that the police have adopted, which expressly say that you shouldn't treat people equally, that you should treat people differently depending on their race, because non-white people might be suffering certain ways and therefore you need more sympathy. We've seen the policy documents. It's there in black and white. They might call it equity or whatever nonsense phrase they use. We call it two-tier policing, and we are dead right to call it two-tier policing. They're gaslighting us. And, you know, if it kicks off in Belfast tonight, and I for so many reasons, I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't, because we need such a clear moral statement about what's going on, and the government will exploit any instability to demean everyone as racist and violent. So I'm really hoping it doesn't kick off. But if it does, it will be because of the pressure cooker effect. We are the government and the media, in fact, lots of the media are constantly putting a lid on ordinary people's concerns. They're constantly pushing them down and, in fact, demonizing them, saying, stop being racist, stop being a bigot. You know, what's wrong with people coming here and seeking a better life? They're constantly demonizing what we think, trying to silence us, trying to cancel us. And that builds up this tension and this pressure. And sometimes that pressure explodes in ways that are unpredictable and undesirable. So if there is tension tonight, and I hope there isn't, it will be a consequence of that culture of censorship. How else are people supposed to express themselves? What we need to do after this atrocious event in Belfast is throw open public discussion to a bit more honesty, a bit more truth. Tell the truth about what's happened to our borders, tell the truth about who's in the country, and get a handle on these problems before it gets even worse.
Brendan, great to have you on the show on a very sad day. Thank you so much. The brilliant Brendan O'Neill, their chief political writer at Spiked Online. Let me know what you think about what he was saying. 0344 499 1000. We're going to shift away from Belfast next and talk about the scourge of DEI that is making working life almost impossible for men, according to our next guest. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Valdo Calacane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Listen, we're running late, but let's go straight over to my next guest. He is award-winning documentary maker, former BBC News reporter, Tim Samuels. Tim, sorry to keep you, but you can understand we're really wrapped up in this Belfast horror. But very quickly, you've been making a series of films called White Men Can't Work, in which you focus on the billions of pounds that have been spent on DEI, diversity, equality, inclusivity in the workplace, that you say has made the workplace almost impossible for men, but particularly white men. Could you explain?
Yes, we have a sort of sense of inevitability, I think, about what's happened, to pick up on your previous story with Henry Novak. We have been trying to find out what's going on with men at work, in a sense of how DEI has impacted men's mental health and ability to do the jobs. But we also spoke to a number of people in the emergency services. And in one of our episodes, we spoke to a former police officer who worked in a town in Lincolnshire last year. And he said that he responded to a call. He was in the town centre. He saw an assault being committed, but it was the year of George Floyd. And the alleged perpetrator was a black man. The victim was white. And he said at that moment, he just paused. He said he was then weighing up policing versus the optics of how it would look if he, quite a big bloke, ran after the alleged perpetrator and brought him down with people out there with their smartphones. And he said, I paused, and at that moment, I didn't give chase. And in the end, he said he quit the force because he felt that the greater risk to him wasn't being injured on the job. It was having his reputation trashed, ending up on some sort of DEI hearing, dragging his family into that. And he actually left the police force. And there was a sense when I was talking to him that policing itself had been compromised after George Floyd, where British police forces essentially adopted the culture that was coming over the pond, despite we have very different styles of policing, and that he wasn't, and other officers weren't able to police in how they felt was the best interest, but because of the dogma that was coming over here.
How do you think, Tim, we've arrived at this point where DEI, diversity, equality, inclusivity, anti-racism, is quite so almost obsessively venerated? How have we arrived at this point?
I think a lot of companies and councils and public bodies and emergency services felt they wanted to do the right thing. It was coming from a good place, particularly after George Floyd and also Me Too before that, a sense of, well, we need to swing the pendulum back. There is discrimination. We need to deal with it. I think there was original good intent, but the solutions that they reached for were really radical. It wasn't just kind of HR do-goodery. It was steeped in a cultural form of Marxism that crudely divides the world into oppressed and oppressor, and is actually very divisive and quite radical, and has ultimately backfired. We spoke to a Harvard professor who's studied thousands of these schemes, And when you call a bunch of white men essentially racist and say, you're all racist, you just don't realize it, there's a backlash, and it actually makes things worse for companies. It's embarrassing for the companies, but when you've spent upwards of $12 billion a year on these things, and then they actually make things worse, it's because a radical form of DEI was rolled out rather than taking on the tough challenges of trying to fix inequality at root, going back into schools, addressing all the sort of multivarious factors that go into this. They wanted easy solutions, overnight, PR hits, and they reached for something deeply radical, divisive, that doesn't work.
I've got long left, Tim, but these companies that have gone in for this in such a big way, I mean, their primary function is supposed to be to make profits, to make money. This isn't about making money. Have they gone into this hook, line and sinker because they're terrified of being demonised by the anti-racist mob?
Yeah, I mean, there was undoubtedly a panic. I think CEOs felt very vulnerable, especially to kind of younger members of staff who were more activist. I mean, it's interesting how some of these companies said this is the most important thing we're doing, and then after Trump got elected, it's like, it's not so important.
Quickly, Tim, because I've got to go. How can we see? Where can we see your brilliant series?
Thanks, Kevin. It's called White Men Can't Work. It's on YouTube and it's also on podcast.
Excellent. Tim, come on again soon. We'll have a proper chat about it. Thank you so much for your time. That's Tim Samuels there, award-winning documentary maker. Next up, we're going to go back to Belfast to continue discussing this horror. Stay exactly where you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're going to go back to Belfast and talk to Caoimhe Quinn. She's a reporter for U105 Radio in Belfast. But first, let's remind ourselves of what the DUP leader, Gavin Robinson, said in the House of Commons earlier. It's a very powerful speech.
Mr. Speaker, what occurred last night will have profound implications for community cohesion in this country. This needs to be a time for honesty and openness and truth? Will he confirm that he and his government recognise that uncontrolled immigration needs to end? Will he confirm that the government needs to reassure and protect our population who for too long have had their concerns ignored? And knowing that he and the Chief Constable and I share a concern that there could be violence, and express my wish and our collective desire for calm, that community cohesion lies on the precipice.
Very strong words. And here is the Assistant Chief Constable of Belfast Police, Ryan Henderson. He's calling for calm in tonight's protest.
We're also aware of calls this evening for protest activity across Northern Ireland and continue to monitor that situation accordingly. I understand that last night's attempted murder will leave people feeling a range of emotions from fear to anger. Our officers have a role to facilitate and accommodate peaceful protest. Everyone in Northern Ireland will, however, sadly remember the disorder which took place over the last 2 years. No one needs to see a repeat of this. This only causes damage to local communities, and unfortunately young people often get caught up in that disorder. So I appeal for calm and the safety of all of our communities in response to this.
I think you'll agree, good for Ryan Henderson. Let's hope there is calm tonight. But we heard the joint leaders of Northern Ireland, the First Ministers earlier, calling for calm. There's a lot of calling for calm. I think that in itself reveals that the situation over there in Belfast is extremely trepidatious. There's a febrile mood there. As I said, those notoriously divided communities, the Protestants, the Catholics, have all come together, united in their anger, in their seething fury about the migrant crisis there. That has led to the ritualistic attempt by a Sudanese man to behead a local guy on a residential street in a British city. That's got to be the end. That's got to be the end. Something has to happen, surely. Let's go over now and talk to Caoimhe Kin. She's a reporter on U105 in Belfast. Hi, Caoimhe.
Hi, how are you, Kevin?
I'm OK. Well, let me know, first of all, what are you gleaning from the community in Northern Ireland about their reaction, their feeling about that horror that happened last night on a quiet residential street in your city?
Yeah, I mean, the community has come out and talked about the complete shockwaves, I suppose, that have taken over the entire community following that horrific attack last night. We heard from local political representatives who have been on the ground with some of the neighbours who witnessed that attack and spoke of how one woman didn't want her children going into school today because they were too afraid to leave the house, having witnessed some of what happened last night. So there's definitely shock right across the community. The police and our political leaders have reached out and made an appeal for calm this afternoon, and we're going to see what comes.
Yeah. Of course, this time last year, I think it's almost a year to the day when the Ballymena riots started over allegations that two Romanian migrant teenagers, 14 and 15, raped a local girl. Those charges were later dropped, but the community was furious, and that's when it made the rest of us in Britain realise that the migrant crisis in Northern Ireland is a thing, is a serious thing. Now, with this new horror 1 year later, I mean, matters are coming to a head, aren't they? I mean, the fury is reaching critical mass, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the last few hours we've had two press conferences, one from the PSNI and another from our political leaders up at Stormont, who were joined by John Boucher from the PSNI, and there was almost a deliberate message of unity given by them. They put out a message for calm heads tonight. They've also put out a message for people to remain calm and appeal for people basically to not take part in the protests that we've seen advertised tonight. There are posters circulating saying that there will be gatherings across numerous locations, And they have said, obviously, in the wake of those cycles of unrest, as you mentioned, we've seen in the past, we had the racially motivated violence back in 2024 in June, and again last year in June, and that's something that they said they don't want to see back on our streets this evening.
I've tried to get, if you watch that video, I don't recommend it to anybody, but if you do, you can hear this guy, this Sudanese guy, he's got his arm in the air and he's screaming something in his native language. A rough translation seems to be that he's shouting something like, "Oh, my soul." So there's something ritualistic about this. Have you heard anything, Caroline, Quiver, sorry. Have you heard anything about the condition of the victim? Because I think the first thing we were all stunned by was that he's still alive.
Yeah, we heard this morning that obviously the victim is in a serious condition in hospital. At that police press conference earlier, we learned that he had very serious wounds to his eyes, neck, face and back. They recovered the weapon from the scene, which was a kitchen knife. He remains in a serious condition in hospital again this evening. So people are watching, praying, waiting for news, I suppose, on what exactly is going to happen in the next coming hours.
Last question, Quiver. In the video, you can see the man who was subsequently to become the victim sort of attacking the knife man with a hurl, a sporting hurl. Is there any word on what the dispute was about?
The police are still trying to establish a motive, and they have urged people not to share that footage that is circulating online. As you mentioned, it is quite a horrific and graphic video. So they are trying to establish a motive. They have asked people to take a step back and made that appeal for calm so they can complete their police process and get the information and evidence we need. But we also did have local MP John Finucane come out this afternoon and basically thank those that intervened in the attack, like the man you mentioned there with the hurley stick, trying to get the attacker off, and just, you know, praise their actions and say that he believes that they saved the victim's life by coming to his aid last night.
That's amazing. I didn't realise. I thought that the guy with the hurl was the guy who was to become the victim, but he was going in to save the poor victim. So incredible bravery by those people. Well, Quiver, big story for you, busy times, but thank you very much for sparing us your important time. Thank you very much for coming on to the show. Quiver Quinn there, reporter for U105 in Belfast. Let's go straight over to my next guest. He's the senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, Philip Kisley. Hi, Philip.
Hi, Kev. Great to see you back.
Good to have you on the show on this very sad day. Well, just flat out, let's just ask you your take on what we saw on the streets of a British city last night, a ritualistic attempt to behead someone.
Yes, things are moving so quickly. These appalling occurrences are becoming so regular that they are becoming part and parcel of our life now. I'm just getting over the footage I saw of Henry Novak last week, and yet here we are with equally appalling footage. This is amongst the worst things I've ever seen. We are at the stage now, we're at the beheading in the street stage of the multiculturalism project, aren't we? It feels as though our culture is under attack. It feels as though society is under attack. It feels as though we cannot cope with wave after wave of mass immigration and the disintegration of a sense of togetherness. And it feels as though we are all vulnerable. I looked at that. I mean, this is awful to say, but I looked at the footage and I thought about the victims and I thought how terrible it was. And then I thought, well, this could happen here. This could happen in my town. This could happen to my loved ones, because it's so random. One of the terrible things about this is it's randomness. It's random, terrible, mutilating violence. It feels as though it can happen anywhere, and it feels as though everybody. I'm just, looking online and looking out in the street. People just feel as though they're on alert. They're on mass alert at the moment because we are in danger.
Yeah, well, we found out literally in the last hour this Sudanese guy's story. He came in 2023 in September. He got sort of a bus from Paris and ended up in Dublin, and then got a bus across the border. September. That was February 2023. February 2023. By September, he immediately, the moment he got into Northern Ireland, he claimed asylum. He immediately did that. And by September, he'd been granted permanent leave to remain. We've got to start asking more questions, haven't we? We can't just let people turn up, break into our country illegally, and then, what is that, 6 months later, they're allowed to stay here for the rest of their lives? What's that all about, Philip?
Yeah, it's before and after. So we've got to clamp down before. These people should not be coming into our country. This is the story of our times, isn't it? People flooding into the country, mutilating, maiming us, killing us. The nature of this thing, you know, going for somebody's eyes with a kitchen knife. That's the detail. That's the frenzied detail. But it's afterwards as well, Kev, because discussion is always shut down. And what happens is, well, a few things happen, don't they? These terrible things hit the headlines. We're told not to discuss it. We're told not to weaponize it. We're told not to politicize it. It was politicized before. It's part of a political narrative. It's part of mass immigration. Okay, it's part of the war on this society. And then what happens is it's always the same thing. Somehow the perpetrator gets removed from the narrative, and we're forced to talk about different things. And it's always Nigel Farage somehow gets the blame for it, and the far right, and it's being weaponized and all of that kind of stuff. No, we need to focus the discussion on cause and effect, what's happening to us and why, and how we can stop it. All the rest is noise. And if people stop us doing that, then that is going to be a massive problem. We need to be able to describe the problem, Kev. We need to be able to talk about it freely. And I'm talking sensibly here. I'm not talking going crazy. I'm talking sensibly because this is so important. We need to be able to understand what we can do about it. And we need to be able to then be able to reassure ourselves that this is not going to happen in the future, but we are nowhere near any of those things yet. And so what happens is people get more and more frightened, people get more and more angry, and we get more and more civil unrest. And what happened in Southampton, you know it's going to happen.
Yeah. And you know what's going to, as they did last week, Starmer, Lammy and the gang are desperate to shift the narrative. Yeah. Disgraceful rioting. Oh, J.D. Vance is wrong to link the Sikh community to our migrant crisis. I mean, I've got some sympathy with that viewpoint. I don't think the Sikh community have got anything to do with the migrant crisis, although the rest of what J.D. Vance, the Vice President, posted on Twitter, on social media about Novak's death being symptomatic of the decline of our civilization, I think was bang on the money. But they seized on that, didn't they? Oh, he's wrong about that. It's nothing to do with the migrant crisis. What I'm saying, Philip, is they better not say this about what happened in Belfast, the beheading attempt, because that is a direct result of this disgraceful migrant crisis that the political class has inflicted on this nation for something like 20 years now.
Yes, it's absolutely. It's cause and effect. You can see it there. It's very definite. There's a very definite chain of events. You can see it. But what happens, Kev, we know this because we've talked about it a lot. We are forced to live in a fantasy world in this country, and it's summed up by the phrase, diversity is our strength. We are not allowed to face reality. They will not allow us to face reality, to talk about reality and do something about it, because the minute they allow us to do that, they have to say not only that they failed, but they put us in massive risk, and we have to pull apart everything. We have to pull apart the whole ethos. We have to pull apart how we live, what we think, what the education system is, how the police force deal with these things, the judiciary, the institutions. We have to look at the borders. We have to do everything. It's huge. So they will not let us do it. They will not let us confront reality because it is not in their interest, and they will keep the fantasy going for as long as possible people until they're out of office, until they're out of their jobs, until they've retired, and they don't live in this country. You know, they're retired somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I watched I was obviously away last week, but I watched the Novak saga unfolding from afar. And I'll tell you that the approach to this disquiet over two-tier policing and the migrant crisis from this government is dangerous. It is absolutely dangerous, and I'll tell you why. You know, when those riots or that unrest erupted in Southampton, in my view, it was a direct result of a frustrated and furious community who looked to the government, who looked to Starmer, and they looked to the police chiefs and say, two-tier policing. We've got a serious problem here. It's palpable. We know it happened. Henry Novak, poor Henry Novak is a victim of anti-white police racism and the police force's ludicrous obsession with DEI and diversity. We shout this, we cry, we've got to do something about this. And what does Starmer do? What does Lammy do? What do the police chiefs do? They stare us in the face and say, no, you Neanderthal far-right racists, you're wrong. There is no such thing as two-tier policing. So pretending that a profound problem does not exist is a recipe for incendiary disaster. This is dangerous.
Yeah, it compounds the problem. I mean, the problem in and of itself is massive and terrible, okay? As we saw, this isn't just violence. This is the kind of violence that is the stuff of nightmares. But when you are being gaslit, when you are being denied the evidence of your eyes and ears, when you're being told that you are the problem, because you are responding in a completely human and humane way, when you are worried about your family, when you're worried about your country and your neighborhood, you are victimized and you are told again that you are the problem. People are not only frustrated, but they are angry, and it feels as though, what can you do? What do we have to say to get these people to listen to us and look at reality and confront reality? Because, Kev, something else is going to happen next week and the week after and the week after, because these things are moving ever quicker, because things are changing very, very quickly underneath our feet. And it is actually getting frightening to live in this country. And we can't carry on in that situation. It's unsustainable.
What is happening? What happened with Novak? Starmer's response to the attack in Belfast is to say it's sickening. You don't say, Keir. And then he went on to say that he will have absolutely no tolerance for abhorrent scenes of violence like this on our streets, as if it's nothing to do with the migrant crisis. So that's his response. So what's happening is worse than a government, worse than the authorities not listening to us. People say they won't listen to us, they won't listen to us. It's worse than that. They listen to us and then they turn around and say, you're wrong. What you say is happening is not happening. There is no two-tier policing. The Chief Constable of Hampshire Police, responsible for Henry Novak's death, frankly, his name is Alexis Boone, he said in the slipstream of that tragedy on his streets, I don't recognise this term two-tier policing. Two-tier Keir says there's no such thing as two-tier policing. Our response to the migrant crisis, you're just Neanderthals, you're racist, you're far right. That is worse than not listening. That is turning round to us and saying, we hear you, but you're idiots and we're going to ignore you. That is dangerous. People will not put up with this for long.
No, they won't. But there's something else as well. It's how Keir Starmer responded there, how he described what had happened. He stripped it of all detail and all context. So it's violence, not any particular kind of violence by a particular kind of perpetrator at a particular time on a particular kind of victim. It's just disembodied violence. This is what they always do. It's a vague tragedy. Wow, this thing has happened. We mustn't let it happen again. But they will not describe the problem. And if you can't describe the problem, or you refuse to describe the problem, you cannot solve it. And this is the kind of circle we're stuck in. They will not describe what's happening, so they cannot solve it. They don't want to solve it, because the moment they start doing that, they have to admit there's a particular kind of problem. It comes down to diagnosing. It comes down to describing. And every time, all of the statements they put out, they're worse than useless, because they tell us that they are going to do nothing about it.
You're so right about what Starmer says. It strips that horror of all detail. Elon Musk has just tweeted, only by protesting repeatedly and loudly will there be any change. And I absolutely agree with him. The key element to that being not violently. Now, we hope tonight's protest, it's going to be big. There's no doubt about that in Belfast. We hope it won't be violent. We hope there won't be any trouble. But I do think the people of this country, if they won't listen to us, or if they tell us that we're wrong, they're going to get more and more problems from civil unrest, frankly.
It is going to be civil unrest, and I think civil unrest, we've been saying this for a long time now, I think civil unrest is just going to be ordinary. We're going to get so much of it, it's going to be on the street pretty much all the time at various points in the country. This is where we are. It never used to be like this. Let's just be, clear for a second. We never used to have Sudanese immigrants beheading people or trying to behead people in the street. The country wasn't like that. I prefer it how it was. And, and everybody in the country prefers it how it was. And yet here we are, and we're told that, London is the greatest city on earth, and diversity is our strength, and multiculturalism is the only way forward. If you don't like it, you're a complete bigot and all of that kind of thing. No, it just hasn't worked. The project has failed catastrophically, and it is dangerous to us. That's all we're saying. So my plea to the people there tonight, there must not be any violence or unrest. What you must do is use your voices, because that's what we have. We have to tell them that we will not take this anymore, because if we don't, they will just give it and give it and give it.
Yeah, in the words of the film, we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. We're really not. But once again, we hope and pray that tonight's protest in Belfast is peaceful, but it's righteous and it's understandable. Let's get that straight. Philip, it's great to have you back on the show. Let's talk again soon. Philip Kisley there, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. Let me know what you think about what we were discussing there. 03444 99 1000. You might get your chance right after this break, because we're going to take some phone calls. That next, stay tuned.
Valdo Calacane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Michael in Lancashire. Hello, Michael. Michael, are you there?
Hi, Kev. You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. What would you like to say, mate?
I saw the video from Belfast last night, and it is really, really disturbing. Like I mentioned to one of your colleagues, I'm an immigrant myself. There's a reason why we left our country to come to the UK. And in front of our eyes, the UK is becoming the places where we fled.
Where are you from originally, Michael?
I'm from Nigeria.
So what you're saying is you wanted to get away, or I think a lot of migrants want to get away from, shall we say, the unrest, the difficult circumstances in their home countries. Now you've come to this country and you're witnessing the same social unrest that you tried to escape.
I mean, it's prevalent everywhere these days. The other time it was Southport. Now look at Belfast. And in the eyes of the whole world, somebody using the knife too. I mean, you can't tell these stories. And we have kids growing up. Like I said, I'm from Nigeria, the north of Nigeria. About 10 years ago, you see this on TV every day. It's now spread all over the country. How can you say the United Kingdom is experiencing the same thing all around? And it is happening. You can't defend this.
How long have you been here, Michael?
I've been here 6 years now.
So in those 6 years, have you witnessed things getting worse? A kind of decline?
It's getting worse. Like, I'll give you an example. The day I saw the news of the Southport, my girls go to dance classes. Now I have to go with them when they go in there.
Oh, dear. Yeah, and I see what you mean, yeah. Well, listen...
It's not something you want to be proud of. And then it's really concerning when people are saying this is not right, and we call them racist. We call them far right. We call them... If anything happens, I still have my country to go back to Nigeria, whether I like it or not. For the British, where did they go to? Where did they go to? This is the country. Even for our own sake, the owners of this country must protect this country. For our sake.
Yeah.
If not for their own sake, for our own sake, because we ran to this place and we have every reason to protect this country. If care is not taken, this country is going down. It shouldn't happen.
I'll tell you what, Michael, if all the migrants we let into the country were like you, we wouldn't have any problems at all. It's really good to talk to you. Thank you very much for ringing in. Michael in Lancashire, all the way from Nigeria, saying in the 6 years he's been here, he's seen a significant decline in our social cohesion. He's right, isn't he? Things are getting worse. 6 years, thinking back, yeah. I mean, where have we come to? We've come to the point where a Sudanese migrant is trying to behead a man on a residential street on a British city. Come on. 03444991000. Let's talk to Royson. Is it in London, Royson?
Hello, Kevin.
Hi.
Roisin here. Yes, hi, Kevin. Lovely to speak to you. Just wanted to point out to viewers what's happening in the Republic of Ireland this week. And I think that this dreadful act that happened in Belfast should be a major wake-up call.
Go on.
The Irish government had an exemption from the EU Migration Pact under the Treaty of Amsterdam. Now, against the wishes, or without any referendum, they have imposed a huge amount of illegal immigration on the country. On the 12th of June, this Friday, the EU Migration Pact comes into place in Ireland. And it means that they have to accept a huge quota of migrants from the EU. They have no control over those numbers.
This is that Northern Ireland has to accept...
No.
Or Ireland has to accept them. Yeah, I see what you mean. And then these migrants, we know, they make their way north, don't they, to get into the promised land?
As this Sudanese migrant did.
Yes, exactly right, yeah.
So the other thing is if they don't accept the quota, they have to pay a fine for each one under the quota. Second thing, they can't return any of these illegals unless they can guarantee that wherever they go to, they're going to get the same standard of education, housing, healthcare, etc. So, you know, I've been in London 40 years. I've seen the changes in London. But what's happening in Ireland has happened much, much more rapidly. I also spend a lot of time in
do you know what I'm thinking, Roisin? You know, I'm thinking, you know, all rancid roads lead to Brussels, don't they?
They do. And we can see how Keir Starmer is getting closer to Brussels. But the comments then that Jeffrey Robinson made in Parliament, he said that...
Gavin Robinson.
He said that, you know, he wanted to unite both communities and that this will cause division. As far as I'm concerned, both communities, Protestant and Catholic, in the north of Ireland are hugely united.
They are. I mean, if there's some small solace to be taken from this absolute atrocity, this horror, it is that the traditionally divided communities, the Catholics and the Protestants, have come together, united in their bitter anger about what is going on in terms of the migrant crisis. Roisin...
And the only division is the division between the people and the government.
Yeah, absolutely right, absolutely. Roisin, really great call. Thank you very much for ringing. Please call me again. Roisin in London there. Let's go to break now. We're going to take a sort of overarching look at the migrant crisis in Northern Ireland with Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, Robert Bates. That next. Stick around.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go straight over to my next guest. He is the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, Robert Bates. So welcome, Robert.
Afternoon, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Now, obviously, we want to talk about the migrant crisis in Northern Ireland. There's near enough 2 million people live there. They've currently got about 2,300 asylum seekers. That's according to the latest statistics. They refer to asylum seekers being given assistance, so the number may be bigger than that. But what we do know is after the riots in Ballymena, exactly a year ago, when the local community rose up in fury over 2 Romanian migrants staying at an asylum seeker hotel. They were aged 14 and 15, charged with the rape of a local girl. We now have the beheading attempt. What we do know is that the community in Northern Ireland, the Catholics and Protestants alike, are united in their absolute seething fury over the migrant crisis that is being imposed on them. And furthermore, it turns out that this Sudanese maniac, he arrived in Belfast, or in Northern Ireland, in February 2023, having come from Paris to Dublin and then by bus to Northern Ireland. Now, when he got to Dublin, he had to be accepted because of EU rules and regulation laws on quotas that countries, that member nations have to take. So he gets to Dublin, he then gets on a bus up to Belfast, breaks into this country. That's February 2023, applies for asylum here in the UK immediately. By September 2023, he'd been granted leave to remain indefinitely, to live here for the rest of his life if he wanted to. So there's the story. I don't want to hear Keir Starmer and the gang saying this has got nothing to do with the migrant crisis. This horror, this ritualistic beheading attempt on the streets of a British city was the direct result of this mad migrant crisis that the political class has inflicted on an unsuspecting nation.
And are we allowed to feel anger yet? Are we allowed to feel rage? Or are we still going to have Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch telling us to remain completely calm and to sing Don't Look Back in anger? Because that really seems to have been the response of the political class whenever we see an atrocity such as this. We now effectively have barbarism on the streets of the United Kingdom. The scenes in this footage are so unspeakably grotesque that I really think actually this has to initiate some change in the way we conduct our asylum system. Northern Ireland in particular has a very interesting problem because of the common travel area, and the Republic of Ireland, as your previous caller pointed out, is beholden to all kinds of EU rules, and the incoming EU asylum pact will undoubtedly compound the problems. But of course, those individuals are then able to travel up to Northern Ireland and launch an asylum claim as soon as they're on British soil. I think there are so many questions that need to be answered here about this particular individual. How was his asylum system even processed, given he had travelled through so many other safe countries? Why was he sort of given it in quite a quick rate compared to the sort of averages? Why was it confirmed so quick? And we know that the Public Accounts Committee last week put out a report that said that there are ill-suited individuals in the Home Office that are making very complicated asylum decisions. We also know the government's own chief immigration advisor has come out in the last couple of weeks and said that we know those individuals in the asylum system come from nationalities that are hugely overrepresented in crime statistics. It's a huge problem, and of course this is not new to Northern Ireland. As you pointed out, the riots last year were again a response to systemic failures that aren't just, the anger isn't just directed towards the individual that has committed these heinous crimes. They're also directed towards officials that have allowed this system to reach such a point now that actually it seems we have a story akin to this one every single week. And yet we're being told the same refrains from several years ago, that everything is sort of hunky-dory, we're going to carry on, we've got a plan, everything is in hand. Well, I think it's quite clear at this point that the system is utter chaos, and it's time that we freeze the asylum system, because we just simply can't take any more of this societal upheaval, any more of these sort of cripplingly demoralising crimes taking place on our streets. I think a freeze is the only way forward.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope that this atrocity, this shocking atrocity on a residential street in a British city, a ritualistic attempt at beheading someone with a kitchen knife, you'd hope that would be the wake-up call, as you say, to stop this open border insanity. But judging by the statement from our dear leader, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, I wouldn't hold out your hopes too highly. Starmer, this is what he said. The attack in Belfast is sickening, and I will have absolutely no tolerance for abhorrent scenes of violence like this on our streets. And then my thoughts are, of course, with the victim, and I thank the first responder, blah, blah, blah. You know, that statement from our Prime Minister strips all the relevant details from what actually happened. It's classic, isn't it? Classic Starmer. Gaslight us by saying, no, this is a migrant crisis, it's just an isolated incident of extreme violence. There was no two-tier policing when Henry Novak died. You think there was, don't you? Well, you're wrong, and I'm the Prime Minister. He just stares us in the face and denies what we can see with our very own eyes is actually happening. I tell you, we hope and pray there's no trouble on the streets of Belfast tonight. But with this obfuscating attitude of our government, of our Prime Minister, to never actually confront the reality of what's going on. He's not confronting what this beheading attempt was all about. He's just calling it an abhorrent scene of sickening violence. He's not confronting what it's about. And this is dangerous. This is why people are so furious, so frustrated. We have a government that pretends the problems that we know palpably are happening are not happening.
And the attempt to pivot it towards just a conversation about knife crime, which is, of course, an important conversation, but there are much bigger sort of features to this particular crime and indeed the Novak case as well. And it's a comms exercise for them. And you can guarantee that the family and the victim of this attack as well will be getting bombarded with phone calls and emails from Number 10 attempting to control the situation and neuter anything that they might come out and publicly say as well. It's all PR. And we, of course, saw the Northern Ireland Secretary, the Nepo baby, Hilary Benn, coming out and saying that he wasn't quite sure what an MP meant when he questioned him about the importation of alien cultures. Well, it's quite clear what he meant. We mean individuals, young men, coming from countries that are so culturally distant from our own, have a background of violence and a kind of whole nomos that is so alien to our own, that are being brought into this country in staggeringly high and increasingly high numbers. And we are therefore seeing with regular frequency now these kind of events. And I've never seen anything like the footage of this particular attack. Just the sheer barbarism of it is something that I think has shaken the majority of the people in this country to their core. And yet we do have a Prime Minister that is so cloth-eared. He is refusing to make any link between an asylum system that is out of control and an increase in awful crimes taking place on the streets of our country. And this is why I think the only conclusion that we can make is that the Labour Party do hate this country at this point. The way they are just ignoring what is so brazenly obvious, and they've been told by their own immigration advisors, they've been told left, right and centre that the system is in chaos and that it is posing a threat to the security of this country or to individuals in our society, and yet they're carrying on as if nothing's going on. And it is all a PR exercise. It'll also be interesting to see what sort of would-be runners and riders in the leadership contest that's coming up have come out and said on this. I don't think they've said anything as of yet. But again, this is it's an inconvenience for them, and it's not something that in any way touches their soul or stirs them to any emotion which might take them toward making the appropriate measures to end this crisis.
Yeah, by the way, this is interesting because nothing galvanises this government more than the chance to crack down on far-right racists. That's how they categorise almost anyone who protests about the migrant crisis. Breaking news, Leon O'Leary, 41, and Connor Bishop, 24, have been jailed at Southampton Crown Court for violent disorder at a protest in the city following the death of Henry Novak. So they got their cases dealt with in 1 week flat, whereas the rest of us, if you're in trouble with the law, you will have to wait 2 years before you go to court. He's at it again, isn't he? Sending people to jail for protests rather than dealing with the real issue, the reality of what actually happened. So the reality of what happened in Southampton was poor Henry Novak died as a result of anti-white police racism. But Starmer, just like after Southport, he thinks this crisis can be solved by sending protesters to prison. It's just pathetic, isn't it?
Well, this expediting of these cases clearly is a warning shot to anyone else that is concerned about the crisis, whether it be this one or it be two-tier policing. And I do think it is incumbent on those that probably are going out justifiably to exercise their democratic right to protest tonight, do so in a very peaceful manner, and make sure that actually we don't give this slippery excuse of a man that is our Prime Minister any chance to divert attention away from what is the real story here, which is an asylum system that is now directly harming the people of this country, a policing structure that actually is prejudiced against the majority of the population. We can't give him an excuse to slip away into tangential conversations and actually to try and squirm his way out of the conversation that he needs to confront, because he's not confronting it. The asylum system under him is completely out of control, and it is a sad fact that we will undoubtedly, sadly, see similar events such as this going forward in the months and years to come, because there is no semblance of a plan from this Labour government. And as far as I can decipher, they're perfectly happy to continue dropping thousands of asylum seekers into more deprived towns and cities across the country, because it isn't affecting them in any way, shape or form. It's about time that actually we conduct ourselves with this opportunity in a peaceful manner and make sure that they have no choice but to listen to what is now something that I think everybody in the country is almost unanimously agreed on is a crisis.
Yeah, well, hopefully this will be the wake-up call that we all need, that this nation needs. But with Starmer in charge, desperately trying to shift the narrative. You wait, if there's trouble in Belfast tonight, he'll be out going, oh, there are disgraceful scenes, I will not tolerate, so on and so forth, shifting the narrative away from what we should be talking about. And that is that due to the migrant crisis, we saw a ritualistic attempt to behead a man on a residential street in a British city. That is extraordinary and that is shocking. Robert, great to talk to you as always. Robert Bates there, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Next up, we're going to go live to New York, talk to Head of Sport, Director of Sport at the Sun newspaper, Sean Custis, who is over in the Big Apple ready for the World Cup. That next. Stay where you are.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, let's go over to New York to talk to the director of sport at the Sun newspaper. He's over there in the Big Apple. Sean Custis. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Have you caught World Cup fever? What is the
Well,
what's the atmosphere like there?
Interestingly, not yet, because I can report a victory for Spurs last night, and it was the San Antonio Spurs who beat the New York Knicks in the NBA Finals. And all they're talking about here is basketball. New York Knicks, who I thought were a really famous basketball team who win lots of things. They don't, actually. They haven't won the NBAs for like 53 years. So everybody's very excited, and they were 2-0 up in the series. And they were playing the Spurs last night, leading at halftime to go 3-0 up with the next game tonight. And if you get 4, you win the NBA Finals. Place was rammed last night. Bars were stacked. Everybody anticipating this amazing NBA victory for the Knicks, and then the Spurs went and spoiled it all. So Spurs did not lose. Spurs win.
Spurs victory. Spurs victory. Don't hear that very often, do you?
Antonio Spurs. They have one more game. They have another game in New York tonight, and then they go to San Antonio. So it's best of 7 games. And that's what everybody's talking about, Kevin.
I'll guess. Well, in terms of the World Cup, England, what am I talking about? England are playing Costa Rica tomorrow night in another training game. Yeah. Do you put much store about all this criticism when England played New Zealand and only won 1-0? Do we, can we take anything from these training games?
A little bit. I think Tuchel will be learning a little bit about certainly players' stamina. How fit they're looking, do they fit into the systems he likes, which is things like Jed Spence on the left-hand side, cutting back onto his right foot, for instance, which is not necessarily the natural way for him as a fullback, but he has been playing quite a bit on the left. Is it Marcus Rashford or Anthony Gordon? Can we find a bit more out about that on left wing? Who can fill in for Harry Kane were he to get injured? Can you play another striker alongside Harry Kane? The other big debate, Bellingham versus Rodgers for the number 10 role. I think that they're big mates, those two. And it's looking like it's in favour of Rodgers to start. But one of the things about this World Cup, because it's so hot, I think you're going to have people like Bellingham possibly coming on and making a big influence in the game when he comes on. A bit like in rugby now where we have finishers. They don't call them subs anymore. They call them finishers. They're going to find that, I feel, in football for this World Cup. It'll be a little bit different. We've seen the example of the water breaks as well already, which are very necessary, I would say. It is pretty stiflingly hot, and I'm not down in Florida, where it's even hotter. But you can feel it's pretty warm here, and it does affect players. We can laugh and say, "Oh, you should be fit. It's lovely playing in the sunshine," but it is fairly energy sapping, and it will take its toll, and especially on England players who are not particularly used to it.
I need to move on to the cricket in just a second, but I asked Mike Amstad this last night, rather unfairly, but I'm going to ask you the same question. From your position, how do you rate England's chances?
Look, it's fair to say we're unlikely to win it, because usually on foreign territory in sunshine, in the heat, we don't adapt that well, but we've been getting closer to winning tournaments. You've got to believe. Previously, when we believed, it wasn't based on much because we weren't getting far enough in the competitions. Now we have done it. We've had a taste of finals. We've got players who knows what it's like to play in finals, having been in the Euros, semi-finals at a World Cup. There's reason to think we can go one better. We've got some very, very good players. I do think they have a chance, but it's an outside chance. It's not a favourites chance. But, let's have some hope, Kevin.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, let's be optimistic. I like Tuchel's idea about team spirit. None of these kind of draconian rules. He's letting all the wives hang out with their husbands. The boys are off to play golf. They played with Brooks Koepka yesterday, didn't they? So I like that.
Southgate was the same. He gave them freedom. He allowed them bits of downtime. People like Capello didn't like that. They were fairly draconian, but he was fairly unsuccessful as an England manager. I think this is a continuation slightly of the Southgate regime. Tuchel has seen that good team spirit, everybody getting on together. None of the cliques which we got used to in 2002, 4, 6, which those players have admitted to, Chelsea, Man United, Liverpool players, never mixing. And now they're all making podcasts about it together, saying, wasn't it funny how we never used to get on together? We're in the England camp. Well, you didn't say that at the time. And actually meant that England didn't perform as well as they should have done because you all didn't want to mix.
Yeah, all at each other's.
All laughing and joking about it now, and it really annoys me.
Yeah, but it's probably good in the long run for our chances. Let's move on to the cricket. Ben Stokes. Now, there's been this bust-up, obviously this fight that's gone on with this massive Samoan rugby player. Now, it's important to stress that if the story's right, Ben Stokes didn't even throw any punches. But I think it's worth saying or asking the question, as the captain, what was he doing breaking the rules, being out drinking so late? They had a team rule that they wouldn't be doing that. As the captain, why was he doing that? And do you think, Sean, that will cost him the captaincy?
I think there's a chance they won't want to do it because they all work together, don't they? McCullum, Rob Key, they're all pals together. They seem to let each other off if they transgress. A couple of things that strike me, Kevin. I mean, we've all been to nightclubs in our day, but we tended not to bother once we got into our mid-30s. The other thing is, I didn't even realise nightclubs were open on Sunday night. What are you doing going to a nightclub on a Sunday night? Also, the game's finished. Do you want to go home? Why do you need to be out drinking? And haven't you learned all the lessons of all those players who've been caught up in troubles over the last year or so, well, 2 years, having to be reprimanded? We've also got a situation where if Stokes was dropped, the vice captain's Harry Brook, who was also involved in his own shenanigans in Wellington not that long ago. I mean, it would look odd if you put him in charge instead of Stokes. I think they're in a real pickle here. It's a real difficult one. And Stokes has really only got himself to blame, whether he was an innocent party or not. Just do not understand why he put himself in that position.
Absolutely not. Sean, great to talk to you in New York. Come back on again soon. Enjoy the World Cup and stay cool. That's Sean Custis, Head of Sport, Director of Sport at the Sun newspaper. Next up, we are going to talk to the Deputy and US Editor of The Spectator magazine, the excellent Freddie Gray. We'll talk to him about all the big stories of the day, so you don't want to miss it. Straight after the news, we'll be back with you then. Stay where you are.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
An attempted ritualistic beheading of a man on the streets of a British city in Belfast, a Sudanese migrant. This must surely be the wake-up call. Surely we must do something about this policy that this nation seems to have, which is basically open borders. This guy, this knife maniac who tried to behead his victim, it turns out that he arrived by bus from Dublin, having come from Paris. He was allowed into Ireland as part of the EU's quota system. Member countries have to take their share of migrants. Once he got to Dublin, he got onto a bus and made his way to Belfast, where swiftly he applied for asylum and was very quickly allowed to stay. Let's take a listen before we go to my next guest, to the leader of the DUP, Gavin Robinson. We played this before, but it's worth listening to again. This is Gavin Robinson speaking in the House of Commons earlier.
Mr. Speaker, what occurred last night will have profound implications for community cohesion in this country. This needs to be a time for honesty and openness and truth. Will he confirm that he and his government recognise that uncontrolled immigration needs to end? Will he confirm that the government needs to reassure and protect our population who for too long have had their concerns ignored? And knowing that he and the Chief Constable and I share a concern that there could be violence, and express my wish and our collective desire for calm, that community cohesion lies on the precipice.
Well, let's go over to my next guest. He's Deputy and US Editor of The Spectator magazine, Freddie Gray. Welcome, Freddie.
Hi, Gavin. Nice to be with you.
Good to have you on the show. Well, Gavin Robinson there asking the Prime Minister to confirm that this horror in Belfast, this attempted beheading of a poor victim, he's been asking the Prime Minister to confirm that that will herald the end of this uncontrolled situation with migrants, letting uncontrolled numbers into the country. Now, it's a good question from Gavin Robinson, but I suspect the answer will basically be no. The Prime Minister can't confirm that, and that this madness of just letting people into the country, very few questions asked, will continue apace. The story of this guy, this Sudanese guy, is that he came sort of under the cloak, the protective cloak of the EU, from Paris to Dublin. Ireland had to take him as part of the quota system imposed by Brussels, by the EU. He then got on a bus, made his way to Belfast, immediately claimed asylum. That was February 2023, and by September 2023, he'd been granted indefinite leave to remain. So clearly, very few questions asked, and clearly we saw from what happened last night, this was a monster who should never have been allowed anywhere near our country.
Well, yeah, I suspect you're right that the answer to that question will be no, not anytime soon, and perhaps not without a dramatic change in government. We do seem to be the kind of endpoint for a lot of illegal migration from Europe still. Brexit was supposed to change that. It hasn't. In some ways, it's made it worse, or things have got worse since Brexit. And people are disgusted by these crimes because these crimes are appalling. But what I suspect might happen if there's a similar upcry to what we had over Henry Nowak in recent days is that after a couple of days of horror, maybe a few more hours of horror, people will start talking about the politics of division and saying that commentators and politicians are dividing the public. over this issue. But I mean, what's clear from that incident is what we should really be worried about is people who want to divide people's heads from their bodies.
That's exactly right. The Prime Minister said that what we saw last night was sickening and he will not tolerate such acts on our streets, such horrifically violent acts on our streets. You know, that was a statement conspicuous by what was absent from it. No reference to who the perpetrator was, that he was a migrant. None of that. Hilary Benn, the government's Northern Ireland secretary, said this: "The attack last night in Belfast was deeply shocking and all our thoughts are with the victims, who is seriously injured in hospital, and with his loved ones. I would like to thank the individuals who showed extraordinary bravery in coming to his aid." So there you have it. That's our government's attitude to this, or their approach to this. It is to, if you like, extract the migrant crisis element out of their narrative. The truth is that what happened on a street in a British city last night, a ritualistic attempt to behead someone with a carving knife, with a kitchen knife, and by the way, gouge out his eyes, was a direct result of the migrant crisis, wasn't it?
Well, yes, it's a consequence of it. There's no doubt about that. I mean, we should be clear that beheading incidents are pretty rare. There was Lee Rigby some time ago. But there have been other violent crimes, vicious crimes, murders committed by illegal migrants on indefinite leave to remain, which is a policy that seems to be given out, as I think Nigel Farage said today, like Smarties. Leave is given out in that way. It's extremely reckless, the way we do not monitor, we do not stop the people who could, a lot of very dangerous, a lot of very mentally ill people coming to this country. We have enough problems of our own with mental illness. And I do think politicians who talk directly to the immigration problem are going to benefit.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll tell you what else I think is extremely dangerous is the way that Starmer and his cabinet crew, indeed police chiefs as well, sort of gaslight us. When we say, hey, Henry Novak, there's a two-tier policing problem here. It's palpable. And they turn around to say, no, 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 you Neanderthal far-right racists, you're wrong. There is no such thing as a two-tier policing system. There is no crisis because there is no two-tier policing. Now, this is worse than a government not listening to us. This is a government listening to us and then pretending to us that the problem that we are furious about does not exist. That is a recipe for civil unrest. People will be more than frustrated, they'll be furious.
Well, exactly. And this gaslighting is what will lead to a really radical and dangerous far right in this country. Because if people feel that their concerns are not being heard about migration, they will increasingly turn to people who listen to them about that. And if those people are not accepted in the political mainstream, then they will be radicalized outside it. And I think this is a very dangerous time for this country. And it's also, you know, a lot of people talk about Americans getting involved in our politics, J.D. Vance making a statement and so on. I think J.D. Vance's tweet was a bit badly phrased and so on. But the Trump administration are genuine. I've spoken to quite a few officials within it, and they're genuinely concerned when they look at what's happening in Britain vis-a-vis immigration and vis-a-vis freedom of speech. They have genuine fears about that. And we can sort of get all British and high and mighty and say, oh, you don't know what's going on in our country. How dare you come and make these aspersions? And we're a much more harmonious, multicultural society than you realise. And that might not be entirely wrong. But the point is, it doesn't look good at the moment. And there's a lot of these stories, and they are coming thick and fast, and they are horrifying. And our reputation in the world is of a kind of increasingly lawless society where illegal immigration is causing massive divisions and problems in the society.
Yeah, and Henry Novak, his sad story went completely global last week, as you say, eliciting responses from Trump and, of course, J.D. Vance. And by the way, J.D. Vance, I think Americans, particularly vice presidents and presidents, have every right to make observations and comments about our country, just as we have a right to make comments about them. I mean, my God, do we make a lot of comments about Donald Trump. So I don't have a problem with that. And I thought J.D. Vance was exactly right when he said that the manner of the death of Henry Novak was symptomatic of a civilization in decline. I would have some truck with him about his suggestion that somehow or other the Sikh community has something to do with our migrant crisis. I don't believe that's fair to the Sikh community. That said, the essence of his tweet, I think we should take seriously and not dismiss like Ed Davey did. So keep your own, get out of our politics, stop intruding here, to sort your own problems out. That's pathetic. So I think J.D. Vance was right, and I think we should start to take these criticisms far more seriously than we do.
Well, and David Lammy said that the Henry Novak case had nothing to do with immigration. And, well, I can see why he said that, because he was talking about Sikhs there. The concern about two-tier policing has a lot to do with immigration and a lot to do with the fact that a lot of white people in this country don't feel they're treated fairly because their country is being sort of changed very radically. And the police and the authorities tend to be more on the side of the new people in this country rather than the people who have been there for a long time. That is a legitimate grievance, and it's to do with immigration. So I thought Lammy was wrong with that. And you're quite right to say British politicians pronounce on American politics all the time. David Lammy, I mean, compared Donald Trump to a member of the Ku Klux Klan not so long ago.
Exactly right. I mean, do you think, I mean, a lot of people are saying, after this horror in Belfast, there's going to be a big protest tonight. We hope that will be peaceful, but it's certainly righteous and understandable. But do you think this might be some kind of wake-up call? Do you think this government might actually respond? I mean, a lot of people are saying now is the time to freeze asylum, to stop people coming into this country. We've got to do something. I mean, when I ask you, do you think this will be the wake-up call? I'm not optimistic that it will be, but it ought to be. But what do you think may happen as a result of the horror in Belfast?
I'm not optimistic about any quick reform anytime soon as to our immigration policies. I do think the sort of centre of the debate is slowly shifting among the political class to where it is among the public. Because among the public, policies like deportation might strike a lot of people as horrifying. But I think actually, if you look at polling, there is quite a lot of support for it. Perhaps not majority support, but there is support for it. And yet our politicians, particularly from the established parties, are very, very far away from that. And I think they are slowly catching up to the fact, if you want to appeal to the public, you have to take this issue seriously, and particularly on illegal immigration, which is a real source of just disgust and horror now, really.
Indeed. Now, to go back to Henry Novak, he was arguably a victim of years of an obsession with anti-racism, an obsession with diversity, DEI. Those coppers, basically instigating a kind of anti-white racist policy that seems to prevail now in the police force. Kemi Badenoch today has called for an end to identity politics, especially in the police force, but in the public sector generally. And she's called for all this, I'm quoting her, all this rubbish to be swept away and a return to good old-fashioned common sense. I mean, that is common sense, isn't it? She's talking common sense.
I think she is, and she's definitely having as far as her sort of media performances are going, she's having a good run. She was very criticised in the early phases of her leadership for being quite inept, looking a bit out of her depth, but now she seems very confident and she speaks with increasing sort of force and clarity. And I think she's done pretty well in the last few days, particularly on the Novak story. I would say, though, that even while kind of insisting that she doesn't play identity politics, Kemi Badenoch does occasionally play identity politics. For instance, I've got it here, this quote, she said, "I'm afraid it doesn't matter if more black boys are searched because it will mean more black lives are saved." And I see where she's going with that. But if her whole line now is, I don't care about Black Lives Matter, I don't care about White Lives Matter, I care about all lives matter, why does it mean more black boys should be searched because more black lives will be saved? I think this is a mistake that politicians fall into. Is they are still sort of talking in a kind of politically correct language when people want things to just be better and for kind of racial, racial politics not to infect the way we administer law and order.
There's a barrister lady called Ambibola Johnson, if I remember rightly. She's the chief, the boss of the Independent Scrutiny Board of the police force. The national police chiefs, pay homage to this, and they respect exactly what the work of this body does. She said, after Henry Novak, she said that the problem with fighting racism in the police isn't that it's gone too far, isn't that the pendulum has swung so far they're now anti-white racists. She said it is that the fight against racism in the police force hasn't gone nearly far enough. I would suggest that is the epicenter of the problem of the police force, that kind of attitude. That is insane, I think.
I think it is insane, and I heard those remarks, and it just reminds everyone that the kind of anti-racist dogmas, which do lead to these perverse outcomes in justice and law enforcement, these dogmas are so embedded in the institutions that people like that, the only way they can advance their careers is by just talking about them all the time. And so in their minds, they think, if I want to get to the top of this institution, I need to just keep saying that anti-racist policies haven't gone far enough, no matter what. And that is the kind of thing a lot of people increasingly feel we need to really go through our institutions backwards and go, we need to take out absurd equity policies, equity rather than equality, equity meaning we have to pay back reparations for sins that none of us committed. That all needs to go. But it's very, very deeply entrenched in not just our academia, but our police forces, our NHS, everywhere. Every major British public body has got these kind of values sort of embedded within it, and a lot of that needs to be rooted out.
Now, this lunacy that we're talking about is very serious, but to prove that there's also a crazy side to all this, almost an amusing side on this, trigger warnings, don't watch out, this Macbeth is a bit scary. Oh, don't read Jane Austen. She's a bit of a sexist, A museum has put a trigger warning on a Janet and John children's book. Your thoughts?
Well, I think, I have no thoughts about that. That sort of madness needs to go away. But it's amazing. It carries on, and right-wingers have been mocked for a long time for saying political correctness has gone mad. But the point is, they were right when they said it in the 80s, and it's just got madder and madder and madder and more entrenched. And I think finally, the majority of people are waking up to the reality of how pernicious it is.
It's also we are now so saturated with DEI, with diversity, with equality, with anti-racism, trigger warnings, this nonsense about Janet and John books. We are so saturated with it. You're right, we need to get rid of it all, but that is going to be something of a Herculean task, isn't it?
I think so. I think it's decades in the making. And I think that this sort of, as I was saying, the kind of drift towards ethno-nationalism you're now seeing on the right, that may even slow it down to some extent, slow down a kind of the political class dealing with it, because they'll be able to say, oh no, that sort of politics is for the far right, for the evil, vile far right that we hate. But actually, nobody is addressing the breadth of political correctness and the depth of it in our society.
Indeed. Listen, Freddie, it's great to have you on the show always. Thank you so much for your time. Freddie Gray there, Deputy Editor and US Editor of The Spectator magazine. Read his stuff on America in particular. It's very good. His stuff's always good, but he's an expert on America. Right, we're going to go to break now. When we come back, our very own man from Northern Ireland, Peter Cardwell, will join us, and we'll get his take on what is going on in his benighted homeland. That next. Stick around.
Varda Calacane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In the studio, I've got Peter Cardwell. He'll be obviously launching his own show in half an hour or so. Welcome, Peter.
Hi, Kevin.
But he's from Northern Ireland, and I thought we should ask him about the febrile situation there. I had the night editor of the Belfast Telegraph on earlier today. He's quite a veteran character, and he can remember the Troubles.
Yes.
And he said... after the Troubles, we've had 30 years or so of relative peace. He said, but the migrant crisis is bringing the Troubles back to Northern Ireland. There is fury again.
He's right, in a very different way, and I think we're going to see Protestants and Catholics, Loyalists and Republicans actually uniting tonight to protest this. Let's hope it is certainly peaceful. I fear it may not be, and we've seen a number of the leaders of Northern Ireland talking about that. My phone has been lit up all day with friends, relatives, contacts, whoever from Northern Ireland telling me about this, and they've described it as a tinderbox because there have been a number of things in the ether, a number of times when politicians, usually unionist, have been warning about this, have been warning about backdoor immigration, the fact that people are coming through the porous border of the Irish border. So we were told, obviously, during Brexit that there couldn't be a hard border for goods, but there's always been a porous border when it has come to people moving because of the common travel area that's existed from the 1920s. So what this guy did, he came to Sudan to Paris, Paris to Dublin, and then, of course, he lost his documents, came north to Northern Ireland, and then became an asylum seeker and has leave to remain in Northern Ireland. That's what we've been told today.
Due to EU quotas, by the way. Ireland had to take him because of the EU quota system.
But there have been a number of interesting and different incidents that are not related specifically to this, but actually just tell a story in the last year or so of where Northern Ireland is, where the real worries they have, like many other parts of the United Kingdom, about open-door immigration. The fact that Yemenis recently in a Belfast park were celebrating Eid with knives and blades, that was something that was brought up by a number of unionist politicians. And they were rubbish. They said, oh, you're just being racist. There was a park in a place called Moygashel, a village in Tyrone, County Tyrone, where there was a sign that said, you know, Muslims aren't welcome here. That was taken down by police.
Muslims tried to open a supermarket in Shankill Road over the last week, and it got torched.
That's right, as well. So there are real problems here. This is really something that, especially in places like Northern Ireland, where, you know, if you think the health service is bad in England, you should try Northern Ireland, where it's about to fall over, quite frankly. Things like housing, for example, there's a lot of community resentment when it comes to people moving in who've contributed nothing to the economy, who are getting homes there. So this incident tonight, I think businesses have been told to close at 5:30 right across Northern Ireland. I think there are going to be many flashpoints. Hopefully there will not be violence, but Northern Ireland is well known as a place where, when riots happen, they really happen. When it comes to Southampton last week with Henry Novak, something so many people in Northern Ireland have followed and care about and have phoned our shows about and are interested in, certainly, it's all to do with all of that. I think all of that sentiment is there, and it's certainly there in Northern Ireland at the moment, and I think tonight is going to be an interesting one. We're going to cover it in depth on my show, of course. We're going to have people on the ground. We're going to talk to a leading politician from the DUP as well, and we'll find out exactly what is happening there, what the leaders have said, and of course the fact that even within the last couple of weeks, the Justice Minister Naomi Long in Northern Ireland, there's another Senior Minister, the Deputy First Minister, Emma Lillipengelly, they have been talking about how they have raised the issue of this porous border, the Irish border, and how anybody can come into Dublin and go up to Northern Ireland with basically no checks. And that is, you know, you talk about Dover and you talk about the South Coast. Well, actually, the Irish border is at least as concerning. Both the Deputy First Minister and the Justice Minister have brought that up with the Home Office, with Downing Street as well, and Downing Street and the Home Office don't seem to be interested.
Well, they just gaslight us. And uncannily, it's almost a year to this day when the Ballymena riots erupted. Yeah. Again connected to the migrant crisis.
And housing as well, this issue of housing.
Because two Romanian teenage migrants were charged actually with the rape of a local girl. Those charges were later dropped. But the local community just erupted. So, you know, one does fear what might happen tonight. The official start of the protest is in 31 minutes' time at 7 p.m. As you say, local businesses in Belfast haven't been asked to shut up. They've been ordered
to
it's
not just in Belfast, it's actually across Northern Ireland. There are lots of different parts as well, and places that would have been in the Troubles, 30 years ago, would have been seen as Protestant or Catholic places, loyalist or nationalist kind of strongholds, but actually they're both places where we expect protests tonight on the same issue. So it'll be really interesting to see how religion and the issue of United Ireland or not is kind of put to one side. Many people still care about that hugely in Northern Ireland, but a lot of that will be put to one side when it comes to the fact that this attack appears to have been perpetrated by an immigrant, someone who shouldn't have been there in the first place, and I mean the horror of it as well. Where
he shouldn't have been allowed to be there. He was there legitimately, but
yes, he shouldn't have been allowed. You're absolutely right. That's a more precise way of saying it. And of course, we know that any kind of concerns about this sort of thing were simply said, oh, it's racism, it's racism, it's racism. Both south of the border and north of the border in Ireland, there's a problem with immigration. Until it started to be tackled, these things are going to happen, and people are going to feel as if the politicians and their leaders, both in Westminster, in Dublin and in Belfast, aren't actually listening to them. We've had the police and we've had the politicians calling for calm tonight. Let's see what happens. We'll cover it in full depth on my show between 7 and 10.
Last point from me, if you will, Peter. Both the Prime Minister and the Northern Ireland Secretary have issued statements, so that's Keir Starmer and Hilary Benn. Starmer said something like, he will not tolerate this kind of extreme violence on the streets of Britain. He's sickened by the event, etc. Hilary Benn said the attack last night in Belfast was deeply shocking and all our thoughts are with the victim, who is seriously blah, blah, blah. I would like to thank the individuals who showed extraordinary bravery in coming to his aid. That is stripping all the details of what actually happened, and that will dictate this government's reaction to this. Just as they did with Novak, they will pretend that the real issue isn't there.
And it's all very well to say this was shocking, but it wasn't surprising. Something like this has been coming for a while. It's been warned about, and the people who have been warning about it, particularly in Northern Ireland and beyond, have been rubbished and told, you're racist, this will never happen. The fact is, when you put people from cultures that don't mix together and you say that we have societal values but they're actually not going to be acknowledged in any way, stuff like this happens. Now, this person may well have had mental health issues, I don't know, but the fact is that it is a horrific attack. It's too horrific for us to show. That's how horrific it is. And the fallout from this, I think, will be tonight and in future days.
Peter, your show is going to be a blockbuster tonight. That starts around about 7... Well, it's not around about. It starts at 7 p.m. Peter Cardwell with the Evening Exchange all the way till 10 p.m. Good to talk to you, Peter.
Thanks,
Thank
Dad.
you so much for your time. So there we are, folks, because when we come back, it's your chance to get your feelings across. We're going to take your phone calls. 03444991000. I'll read some of your messages as well. We've got a very, very active switchboard, as you might imagine. Back in a mo.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Loads of messages, loads of calls. We'll go to the phones in just a second, but here's a few of the texts you've been kind enough to send me. This is Martin. He says, why was this individual not returned to Dublin? The Irish are quick to send any back north. Well, he wasn't returned to Dublin because the moment he arrived in Belfast, he claimed asylum, was allowed to stay, and then, 6 months later, was given permanent leave to remain. So, you know, we allowed him to stay. He doesn't get returned to Dublin. There you have it. Mark from Buckinghamshire says, I'm sick of hearing your thoughts, Keir Starmer. It's just patter. Action now. Start doing something. I think a lot of people would agree with Mark there. Here is Anne in Archway. She says, no point calling for calm again if nothing is done to stop the problem again. Stop and remove immigrants. Governments don't understand this. I don't know why they don't understand it, but it's a good point, Anne. Nigel says, afternoon, Kev, how long before the police say enough is enough and hand in their badges? The UK is not safe for those who choose to call the UK home. UK citizens are not those who deserve to be punished for the consequences of mass migration under order of our government over the past far too many years. You're exactly right. We do not deserve this. We shouldn't have to live like this. This is the Westminster bubble gang. This is 15 years, 20 years probably of mad migration policies, thanks mainly to the Tories. That's their fault. Kemi Badenoch says, yeah, we got it wrong, you know, you have to forgive us for that. People aren't forgiving you, Kemi. Kemi Badenoch's good. The rest of the party, I don't know. But generally, in principle, we do not forgive the Conservative Party for the migrant crisis. You can't get out of it just by going, yeah, made a bit of a mistake there. Yeah, the Boris wave, that's good, isn't it? come on. Of course, the Labour Party, the Labour government, have pulled off the impossible by making the situation even worse. So both those parties are going to get punished for the migrant crisis they caused and imposed on an unsuspecting nation. Here's Peter. Can't wait for Mastermind Lammy to make a comment on the Belfast attempted beheading. It will make things 10 times worse. Yeah, they'll start saying don't politicise it soon. It's political. And as you say, calling for calm. This is interesting. This is from Craig. I served in Northern Ireland, and I think this could be the lighting of the torch paper that starts the wave that may finally topple this government. The people of Northern Ireland won't take this lying down. I don't think they will. Don't want any violence. We want this demonstration, this process tonight to be peaceful. It will be more powerful if it is. Just let's hear their voices. Let's not see violence. Let's not see unrest. It will be more powerful and more effective if it's peaceful. We hope and pray it will be that. But it's Northern Ireland. You know what I'm saying. Becca says you can tell there's a problem when schools are doing the American lockdown exercise. In my day, it was just to test the fire alarm once a year. Yeah, now kids are stabbing each other in schools. What happened to harmless playground scuffles? Clay says, talking about politicians and the things they say, I'm sick of hearing these bleeding hearts saying this must never happen again and we need to talk about this. The time for talking is over and it's time for action. That's from Clay in Folkestone, right on the front line of the migrant crisis. Right, let's go to the phones and we're going to talk to you, the audience, the people who matter for the rest of the show. First, Elizabeth in Chorley. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi.
What would you like to say?
I'd like to say that no political party in the United Kingdom has got the will or the push to stop all this nonsense that is going on. And it is becoming a very imminent threat.
I think it's, yeah, but I mean, you say no political party. Certainly the government hasn't got the will to do it.
I don't think anyone has. I don't think the Conservatives have. I don't even think that Nigel Farage has.
Why do you think? I mean, I'm not here to bat for any political party, but Nigel Farage is pretty unequivocal that he will solve the migrant crisis. Why do you doubt that, Elizabeth?
Look at the state of it. Look at the massive amounts that are coming over. What are they going to do? They're here for good.
Yeah, well, you're right about that, because Farage has said that there are so many here that deporting all of them will be basically an impossibility. So I see where you're coming from.
And I'm absolutely disgusted because I'll tell you who started it. Boris Johnson.
Well, he didn't start it, but he made it a lot worse. I'll tell you who started it. It was basically, or Cameron sort of lit the fuse paper. Theresa May was a nightmare with it.
Yeah, but
Boris Johnson, he sent it into overdrive.
Johnson pontificated and said he was the Messiah.
Well, he said he was the Messiah.
Country.
I don't think he said he was the Messiah. He might have thought it.
Yeah,
he might have thought
he
it.
Actually did.
He said, I am the Messiah, did he?
No, he said he could cure all the ills. And I'll tell you what.
He was a disaster. He one of the worst things about the migrant crisis is the Boris wave. He let in 3.5 million migrants legally who are just now beginning to qualify for full benefits under the indefinite leave to remain system, and that is going to cost this country billions and billions and billions of pounds. The Boris wave is a catastrophe. You're right. He was useless when it came to the migrant crisis.
And I actually, I'm sorry, but Kemi Badenoch, I respect her. I respect Nigel Farage, but they can't cure this. I don't think anyone can. And I actually think we're going to have to soak it up.
Well, it's a very pessimistic outlook, Elizabeth, but there's not a whole lot of cause for optimism. I do take your point. Well, Elizabeth, on that rather downbeat note, very good call, though. Thank you for calling in, and call me again. Elizabeth in Chorley, with a very bleak prospect she's outlaying there. David in Gloucestershire is on the phone. Hello, David.
Hello, Kevin. How are we all?
I'm OK. What are your thoughts about what happened in Northern Ireland?
Well, I am very, very concerned now. I think this isn't the one-offs or the odds and sods. This is now becoming nearly a daily thing of something somewhere's happening somewhere, and I think it won't. You know, if the government keep their head in their sand and think this isn't happening, they can dream on. And if they start blaming the far right and all that, this is going to get really, really dangerous. I mean, today, two-tier. I mean, I know these chaps probably did wrong, but to lock them up within a week.
Yeah, what's that about? They're doing it again. It's a Southport situation. Most people, you know, if you get in trouble with the law, you get charged, you're going to face a trial. You wait 2 years. These guys are in jail in a week. Actually, in a way, they're being granted a rare privilege. But it's Starmer, again, trying to show how tough he is on rioters, you know, unacceptable scenes and all that.
Well, I think if he's not very careful, it's going to kick off, and I really do fear for this country, because civilization will collapse. I mean, I've said this about this two-tier policing. Civilization in this country will totally collapse. And this government have only got themselves to blame, and I really do fear for it. I really do now.
I do too, David. I know exactly what you're talking about. And the reason that I fear civil unrest is, I've been stressing this all the show, it's not that Starmer and police chiefs aren't listening to us. They listen to us when we say there's two-tier policing. Henry Novak is the victim of anti-white police racism. We say this. We see it all the time. There's two-tier policing. And it's not that they don't hear us and they don't listen to us. They hear us. They listen to us. And then they turn around to us and say, you're wrong. There is no two-tier policing. That is a recipe for incendiary disaster. There will be civil unrest if they keep deliberately pretending there is not a problem here.
Yeah, I am really, really concerned. I mean, by what their sort of reports today, I mean, this chap was what? He was here in February.
Yeah, he arrived in February 2023. By September, he'd been granted indefinite leave to remain. So not many questions asked of him, clearly, David.
Yeah, no paperwork. They said he had no paperwork. How could you get... I mean, I couldn't move to America with no paperwork.
Well, none of them have paperwork. That's the whole point. They chuck all the ones that come across the channel, they chuck all their documents into the sea.
Well, they said he lost his paperwork.
Yeah, well, yeah, they all say that. They all say that. At which point I say, we should say, well, you can't come in then. Instead, we say, come in. Here's a 4-star hotel. Here's £50 a week. Here's a free doctor. Here's a free dentist. Here's a free lawyer to fight your case to stay. This is an insane country, David.
We're absolutely mad now. We're absolutely mad. I mean, this is just going to carry on. I really do fear. I'm really worried now.
I'm worried as well. I'm worried about what might happen in Belfast tonight. I hope it doesn't kick off, but I've got pretty low hopes of that actually staying peaceful there. People are furious over there. How would you feel if on the states where you live in Gloucestershire, on the streets of your local town, a foreigner from Sudan tried to ritualistically behead his victim in your town on a residential street? How would you feel? Those people are seething mad.
I mean, I don't blame them.
No, do I.
I don't blame them. I mean, if it kicks off tonight, they've only got themselves to blame. You know, the authorities have only got themselves to blame.
Totally agree.
It's peaceful. They've got to be peaceful. And maybe that's what it's going to need. I think it's going to be mass peaceful protests and maybe national strike. And I don't know what else we can do now. I really don't know.
Look, David, I'm with you. I share your exasperation. The authorities just won't. As I say, they do listen to us and they ignore us. That is worse than not being listened to. David, great call. Thank you very much for ringing in. Call me again. David in Gloucestershire. Let's go to break. Got loads more calls. Let's take some of them after these messages.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. A little breaking news. A GoFundMe page has been set up for that hero with the hurl. He sort of bashing this knife maniac, the beheader in Belfast. A GoFundMe page has been set up for that very brave man who stepped in to save the man being stabbed. Undoubtedly saved his life. It's remarkable that guy didn't die. It's called Support Belfast Knife Attack Hero with a Pint. It's so far raised £3,000. I think all those people who stepped in to try and save that poor guy deserve a cut of the action there. But yeah, that's worth paying. So support Belfast Knife Action Hero. I'd love to get that guy with the hurl on this show. If you're listening or watching, 03444991000. Let's get you on. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Paul in Brighton. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Kevin. Yeah, what I'd like to say is, with all these incidents that we're having, I wonder how long it's going to take that pathetic specimen of a Prime Minister that we have to actually wake up and smell the coffee. We had the terrible recent event with poor Henry. We had the stabbings and killing of the 2 students and the bus driver gentleman, I believe he was.
Yeah.
And there's currently the inquiry about that, which just shows how broken our police, our social services, our court systems are.
Do you know what's pathetic, Paul? What's pathetic as it is extremely deeply concerning is the way police chiefs, the way Starmer and this cabinet gaslight us. They pretend there's nothing to see here, no problem. We go two-tier policing. That killed poor Henry Novak. There's no such thing as two-tier policing. It's really frustrating.
Well, there was the poor girl that was the receptionist in the hotel that was stalked and stabbed.
Yeah, the guy in Wolverhampton, yeah.
We've had in Brighton here, we had a horrific gang rape of a poor girl.
Yeah, the three guys I remember, yeah.
Yeah. So all these things, these should be wake-up calls to that pathetic specimen that we have, an embarrassment. Incidentally, Kevin, I cast your mind back. This goes back a long way, but when you talk about two-tier policing, there was an incident when the Blair creature was in charge of our country, and there was an incident where a chap was arrested, and he was a foreign national. He may have been. I'm not sure of his circumstances, whether he was an actual legal resident of the UK. Anyway, he was arrested, and he was put in the back of a police car, not handcuffed or anything.
Oh, yeah, of course not.
And he had a concealed knife. And he stabbed the police officer to death in the back seat.
You see, this is it. Yeah, if that was a white guy, he'd be in handcuffs. Listen, Paul, I've got to move on because I've got a lot of other calls, but that was a really good call. Thank you very much for ringing. Call me again. Good text here from Tim. Interesting. He said, the difference now in Northern Ireland is that I see on social media that both sides, Protestants and Catholics, are siding together. That has never been seen in a century. United in their fury over the migrant crisis. Extraordinary. Let's talk to Dave in Dublin. Hello, Dave.
Oh, yeah, how are you getting on?
I'm all right. So what do you make of all this? This Sudanese lunatic, the attempted beheader, came to your fair city from Paris, got on a bus, made his way straight to Belfast, applied for asylum, and then was swiftly allowed to stay. What do you make of all that?
It's awful scary. You know, that's the overwhelming emotion. It's scared. How can this be allowed to happen?
Well, it's the EU, Dave. It's Brussels. Your country, Ireland, is forced to take its quota of migrants. We're presuming that this Sudanese lunatic was one of that quota, came to Dublin, got straight on a bus, went to Belfast, claimed asylum in the United Kingdom, which he promptly got. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
But my understanding is that you must claim asylum in the first safe country.
That's not your understanding. That's a fact, but nobody seems to do it.
So last time I checked, there's no direct flights from Sudan to Ireland.
Well, no, he came from Paris, where also there's not a whole lot of war and torture either.
So, like, how many more of these do we need to put up with before we stop? 6, 7? Like, how many?
Well, how many attempted beheadings, ritualistic beheadings, do we have to endure before this government does something? I mean, you know, it doesn't seem like anything will galvanise this government to really get to grips with this escalating migrant crisis that is clearly spiralling right out of control.
Well, it's going to need a big political change, and I think, you know, we have some good candidates, Nick Delahanty, Jerry Hutch, that will make a bit of a change.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what you need. I mean, if Ireland is to get to grips with its migrant crisis, you need to leave the EU.
Well, I don't like queuing up for half an hour getting through passport control.
Yeah, I've just been to Greece. Go to Greece, Dave. You race through. Don't worry about it. Don't let them sell you that load of rubbish. But listen, it's good to talk to you, mate. I've got to move on. I've got a lot of other calls, but really good call. Thanks to Dave in Dublin. Mike is a new caller from Oxford. Love a new caller. Hello, Mike. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, Kevin. Just all of this kind of chaos and disorder, I think, really precipitates, we need to have a wider conversation about the monopoly of force. The police, and I think there are a lot of good police, men and women, out on the streets. They won't or they cannot protect the British people anymore. I think women have to be allowed to carry pepper spray. And I think if one person accidentally gets pepper spray in their eyes, that's better than one woman getting raped.
I think that's right. But don't you think that one of what we saw with Henry Novak, one of the reasons that the police seem incapable sometimes of protecting the public is they're terrified of accusations of racism?
Oh, yeah, look, I could probably do half an hour on DEI, how I think it's a cancer in society, how I think, you know, we should follow Martin Luther King and be completely colourblind. I think, you know, for whatever historic injustices, why are we punishing 17, 18-year-old white boys now, not getting opportunities in government, in universities, and, you know, I could do a whole thing about that, but I think we really need to have a wider conversation about British people being able to protect themselves and protect their community.
Well, I think you're right. Yeah, of course. But it would be better if we could get back to a sensible policing system where the coppers aren't obsessed with equality, diversity, and not being racist, and just got on with their jobs, caught the bad guys, and kept trouble off the streets.
Yeah, absolutely. But are we going to see that kind of change in the next 2 years?
In the next 2 centuries, the way things are going, Mike.
How many more people need to die? How many more women need to be raped before we go, no, enough is enough? And this is going to be probably quite a controversial view, but I think the only thing that is going to shift the government is violence.
Yeah, but we don't want to see that. We don't want to see that. I'm not sure that violence would shift them. They'll just start arresting everyone and throwing them into jail like they've already started doing with the protesters from Southampton last week. So I don't think violence is the answer. I think peaceful protest is far more eloquent than violent protest. So thank you very much, Mike. I've got to move on. Good call, though. Don't make that your last call. It was your first, but not your last, I hope. Mike in Oxford. Let's talk to Alex in Belfast. Hello, Alex. What's happening there?
Hello. Very volatile here at the moment. There's a lot of demonstrations going to happen tonight.
Yeah. Is anything going on now, Alex, or are you just...
There's a lot of people gathering. In the city centre and whatnot.
What's your feeling as a Belfast man? What's your feeling about the fact that a Sudanese guy tried to ritualistically behead a man on a residential street in your city? I mean, you've seen some horrors in your city, but this one, just extraordinary. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I served in the military, and after leaving the military, I lived in London, actually, for 44 years, and recently moved back 10 years ago. I can see a huge difference in the community that are living in Belfast, especially, over the past 10 years. The violence is getting out of hand.
I mean, you've got a new source of social unrest, and that's the migrant crisis.
Yes, but the communities over here, I've seen a lot of posts on social media with both Catholic and Protestants turning towards this.
Yeah, no, they're coming together. That's the one good thing.
I feel it's going to unite our wee country.